All right, folks, I'm going to go ahead and get us started with our meeting this evening. I'm going to go ahead and call the Missoula City Council meeting for July 21st to order at 6:01 p.m. Thank you very much, members of the public, for coming and joining us this evening, both in person and online. Before we get started with our agenda, if you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move on with our roll call. And so, Ms. Trimble, I can tell you that Councillor Nugent let us know that he will be absent this evening, and Councillor Farmer is currently traveling, but able to either be on now or will join shortly, so we will find out. But if you'll go ahead and do roll call now, that'd be great. Okay, no problem. Glad you're here, Michael. Thank you. All right, slight pause. We need our clerk to be able to hear us. That's what's the issue. Okay.
I can hear you.
We're doing good? Okay.
Okay, thank you for your patience. Let's do a roll call.
A little loud. Claire's audio is a little loud in the room. Okay, thank you.
Let's try this. Anderson?
Bit of an echo. Let's work on that for just a second.
Sure.
I'm happy to report I am present, but I don't know how much longer my ears are going to last.
Claire, you want to give us this quick sound check?
Yeah. Becerra?
That sounds really good there.
Present.
Excellent. Campbell?
Here.
Carlino?
Present.
Farmer? Absent?
Correct.
Jones?
We anticipate seeing Councillor Farmer here in a bit online, and I'll let you know when we see her.
Thank you. I'll watch for her too.
Thank you.
Jones?
Present.
Present. Nelson?
Present.
Nugent? Absent.
Absent.
Savage?
Present.
Cheryl?
Present.
And Basika?
Present.
All right, thank you. And we do have a quorum.
Okay. Thank you very much. Our next agenda item is approval of the minutes, and those are submitted from July 14th, 2025. Do any council members have any questions or proposed changes for the minutes? Okay, not seeing any here, not seeing any online. Those minutes will remain as submitted. Thank you. The next item is item number 3, which is our committee meeting schedule for this coming Wednesday, July 23rd. Ms. Trimble, do we have any updates to the committee schedule for July 23rd?
No updates. The committee schedule is as was published. Just noting we do have an afternoon start. We're not doing morning meetings this week.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. We'll next move on to special presentations and proclamations. This is item number 4 on the council agenda. We do not have any neighborhood council updates this evening, and we do have a proclamation, however. That proclamation is in recognition of American with Disabilities Act, and I'll go ahead and read this now. Whereas disability is a natural part of the human experience, and over 12% of Missoula residents live with one or more disabilities, and whereas on July 26, 1990, the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA, was signed into law to ensure the civil rights of people with disabilities and establish a clear and comprehensive national mandate for the elimination of discrimination against individuals with disabilities. And whereas the ADA has expanded opportunities for Americans living with disabilities by reducing barriers and changing perceptions, affording people with disabilities the opportunity to participate in the mainstream of American life and be treated as equal and valued members of society. And whereas we recognize that the full promise of the ADA will only be reached if we remain committed in our efforts to fully implement the ADA and to reduce attitudinal barriers, labels, and stigmas towards people with disabilities that still exist. Now, therefore, I, Andrea Davis, Mayor of the City of Missoula in the state of Montana, hereby proclaim the 26th day of July, 2025 as a day to commemorate the 35th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act in Missoula, Montana, and recognize that full community inclusion by individuals with disabilities is vital to the success of our community. Today, we celebrate the progress that has been made by reaffirming the principles of equality and inclusion and recommitting our efforts as a community to achieve full ADA compliance and realize the full promise of the ADA. I do believe we have some folks from the public that wish to speak to this evening. So come on up if you'll share your name with us. I'll go ahead and turn the microphone on now. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. My name is, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, but you can pull that microphone just a little closer to you and we can hear you easier there.
My name is Blake DePastino. I'm Director of Communications for Summit Independent Living. It's a disability advocacy nonprofit that serves all of Western Montana. And this statement is supposed to be given by Travis Hoffman, who's our policy director. He couldn't be here tonight, but I talk for a living, so he asked me to do it. July 26th will mark the 35th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The ADA is more than law. It is a civil rights milestone, a social movement, and a promise. For 35 years, it has helped tear down barriers and build a more accessible and just nation to ensure equity and inclusion for people with disabilities in mainstream society, to learn, to work, to travel, to live in their communities, and to recreate. Now, Missoula has made strides in the realm of inclusion, equity, and accessibility in the past 35 years since the passage of the ADA, thanks to forward-looking leaders, including many who have sat in this chamber, and thanks to the active engagement of citizens of all stripes throughout Missoula. So it is important that we take time each July to commemorate this important civil rights law and to honor the courage of those advocates who came before us to fight for our full rights as equal citizens, and who were brave enough to envision the promise of the ADA: inclusion, accessibility, and equity. However, the very promise that the ADA was built upon is currently under attack. Federal agencies are trying to weaken accessibility standards. Medicaid, a lifeline for people with disabilities, allows them to live in their communities, is being slashed. and millions of people across the nation have engaged in a cultural war on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, the very premise behind the ADA. The premise being to ensure that people with disabilities are treated as equal citizens under the law, with the same opportunities for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So as we commemorate this historic civil rights law that means so much to millions of people with disabilities across the nation, it is time that we must also recommit to its vision. A future where all people, regardless of ability, are included, respected, and empowered. This can only occur through open public discussion and collaboration, and when we can all embrace inclusion in all areas of life. We ask you all to join us in pursuing that promise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DiPastino. Thanks for being here with us this evening. I do believe there's other members of the community wishing to speak towards this proclamation this evening.
Good evening. My name is Kristen Newman. I live in the north side of Missoula. This anniversary of the ADA is not just a milestone to celebrate. This anniversary lands in the midst of a disability civil rights crisis. As President George H.W. Bush signed the act 35 years ago, his closing remarks were, "Let this shameful wall of exclusion finally come tumbling down." Over the past several months, we have witnessed this very wall of exclusion being rebuilt on a national scale. In this month alone, the disability community is seeing sweeping strides taking place in the dismantling of access to healthcare, education, work opportunities, and community. The ADA is only as strong as it is enforceable. What happens when those assigned enforcement agencies no longer exist or no longer have the capacity to enforce? The ADA has always been a complaint-driven law, the disability community carrying the weight of accountability on our communities and on our government. This is why now more than ever, it is imperative that the city of Missoula and all local governments consider codifying its foundational language into local ordinances and policies. It's not good enough anymore to just rely on the ADA as something that is a given. Thank you.
Thank you for coming down and speaking this evening, Ms. Newman. Nice to see you. Other members of the public that wish to speak on this particular proclamation here for this proclamation this evening? Okay. And any council members wishing to speak? Okay. Well, thank you all very much. It's a wonderful opportunity to hold up the 35th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And we look forward to our continued partnership to make our community continue to be inclusive. And Councillor Anderson.
Thanks so much, Madam Mayor. I just feel it's really appropriate that we're celebrating this today because last week we had the memorial for Congressman Pat Williams, who served Montana for 18 years, and he was very instrumental in part of this and a huge champion. And I know that he would, if he was in Congress right now, his voice would be one of the loudest, pushing back on all the terrible things that are happening right now. So I just wanted to take a moment to say that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. Appreciate that. All right. Thank you again. And I'll go ahead and queue up what the rest of our meeting looks like this evening. So for our agenda, we do have two public hearings. No, excuse me, just one public hearing. We have two items under new business, the executive budget presentation, and we'll outline the budget calendar for the next several weeks. And then our fiscal year, there's my budget presentation, then the fiscal year 2026 budget, setting the hearing for that. We have then our consent agenda and then one item under regular business, and that one item under regular business is the Riverfront Triangle Fox site sale and development. So we'll go ahead and carry on with our agenda, starting with our public hearings. Item 5.1, we have a rezone parks 4, 6, and 8 in the Missoula Development Park located on Expressway. And we have a staff member presentation by Claire Lovelace. And I saw Claire online.
Hello and good evening. My name is Claire Lovelace, an assistant planner with the Community Planning Development and Innovation Department. Development Services has received a request from IMAG Corporation on behalf of Missoula County Land and Economic Development to rezone 3 subject properties located on Expressway referred to as Parks 4, 6, and 8. The properties are proposed to be rezoned from OP3 Public Lands and Institutional with the Missoula Development Park Neighborhood Character Overlay to M1-2 Limited Industrial with the Missoula Development Park Neighborhood Character Overlay. This rezoning will result in a standard zoning district under Title 20, which cannot be conditioned, and standard zoning districts must apply the same requirements to all parcels within the same zoning district equally. The subject properties are located off Expressway between Sandpiper Drive and West Harrier Way. This is within the Grant Creek neighborhood and City Council Ward 2, north of the Missoula, Montana Airport and south of Interstate 90. The properties are located within an established service area for Missoula hospitals, city fire, and police departments. Here is a closer view of the parcels outlined in red and labeled Park 4, 6, and 8. The 3 subject properties total to 367,210 square feet in size and are currently vacant. The properties are in a developed area of Missoula on Expressway and are surrounded by commercial and industrial uses to the east, west, and south. The applicable regional plan is the Our Missoula 2045 Land Use Plan, which recommends a place type designation of industrial and employment. This designation is an area intended for uses such as manufacturing, assembly plants, vehicle-related commercial activities, metal industries, warehouses, outdoor storage yards, and distribution facilities. These employment areas support a diverse range of economic activities that can accommodate a mixture of office spaces, industrial plants, manufacturing, research, and distribution. This area is intended for businesses ranging from small local startups to large national or regional enterprises. The city land use plan indicates that M1 and M2 are the current relatable zoning districts within the industrial and employment place type designation, and the M1 and M2 zoning districts permit various civic, commercial, and industrial uses. The proposed M1-2 limited industrial and the Missoula Development Park neighborhood character overlay zoning allows caretaker apartments subject to Title 20 Missoula Development Park overlay standards. However, no other residential building types are allowed in the requested M1-2 zoning district. The applicant is requesting to rezone the subject properties from OP3 Public Lands and Institutional with the Missoula Development Park neighborhood character overlay to M1-2 Limited Industrial with the Missoula Development Park neighborhood character overlay. The proposed zoning district is consistent with the land use plan recommendation for the industrial and employment place type designation. The current zoning is not consistent with the place type designation, but this OP3 zone is considered appropriate in any place type if publicly owned and serving public uses. The city land use plan calls for a focus inward approach that encourages infill development where infrastructure and services already exist that enhance connectivity while limiting sprawl into sensitive and constrained lands. The proposed M1-2 zoning would increase permitted uses in an area with existing infrastructure served by paved trails and sidewalks. There are existing sidewalks along Expressway and along West Harrier, and there are no sidewalks abutting Alloy South. There is a bus stop serving Mountain Line Route 11 located 0.8 miles from the subject properties to the east. The parcels are currently served by city fire and police. The subject properties can be served by city water and sewer services as sewer mains exist adjacent to the subject properties. At the time of redevelopment, new structures would be required to connect to city sewer and water. Shown here is the current zoning map with the subject properties outlined in red, zoned OP3 Public Lands and Institutional. The surrounding parcels are zoned M1-2 Limited Industrial. There are a few parcels zoned OP3 Public Lands and Institutional that are adjacent to the subject properties that will remain with this rezone. This map shows the Missoula Development Park neighborhood character overlay. As shown on the map, the subject properties and surrounding properties are all within this overlay and subject to these standards. Now this map shows the subject parcels outlined in red with the proposed M1-2 limited industrial zone. The Missoula Development Park neighborhood character overlay will remain with this proposed rezone. This requested zoning district complies with the land use plan recommendations for the area and permits a broad range of uses within civic, commercial, and limited industrial classifications along an urban collector street such as Expressway. Here's a comparison between the existing and proposed zoning districts. OP3, public lands and institutional, does not require a minimum parcel size, and the M1-2 limited industrial zone requires a minimum parcel size of 5,000 square feet. The existing OP3 zoning district requires a 30-foot front setback, 10-foot side setback, 15-foot street side setback, and a 20-foot rear setback. The proposed M1-2 zoning district under the Missoula Development Park overlay standards requires a 50-foot front setback off Expressway, a 40-foot front setback for streets other than Expressway and Airway Boulevard, and a side and rear setback of 20 feet. Both zoning districts have a maximum height of 50 feet per the Missoula Development Park neighborhood character overlay standards. The permitted uses allowed in the M1-2 zoning district are shown on the screen. These uses vary from a mix of civic, commercial, and industrial uses. Along with these uses, the proposed zoning allows caretaker apartments subject to Title 20 Missoula Development Park overlay standards. No other residential building types are allowed in the requested M1-2 zoning district. Staff's recommendation is based on the review criteria provided in the Title 20 zoning ordinance. The proposed rezoning complies with the land use plan and focus inward objectives, as the M1-2 district is a current relatable district of the industrial and employment place type designation. The subject properties can be served by sewer, water, motorized, and non-motorized facilities. The subject properties are within 0.8 miles of a bus stop and existing multimodal transportation infrastructure, making the property suitable for development growth. The proposed M1-2 zoning district would allow for additional commercial and industrial uses to serve the larger community, as well as adjacent neighborhoods compatible with the surrounding land uses. Future development must comply with all applicable local, state, and federal regulations, which ensures protection of public health, safety, and welfare. Since there is no change in building height, provision of light and air will be protected. Furthermore, there is a slight increase in building setbacks with the proposed M1-2 zoning district, protecting the provision of light and air. The M1-2 zoning district is compatible with the commercial and industrial uses of neighboring properties and the future land use plan for the area. The rezoning considers the value of buildings and is an appropriate use of land because it complies with the place type designation in the land use plan and is compatible with adjacent uses and zoning. The zoning amendment would provide an opportunity for infill development that is consistent with the surrounding uses. The rezoning is in the best interest of the city because the rezoning implements the recommendations of the 2045 Our Missoula Land Use Plan for areas designated industrial and employment, while increasing allowable uses in an area with good access to services and transportation. On July 1st, 2025, Planning Board voted unanimously in favor of a recommendation to City Council to adopt an ordinance rezoning the subject properties from OP3, public lands and institutional, to M1-2 limited industrial, along with the Missoula Development Park neighborhood character overlay. And with that, staff recommends City Council adopt an ordinance to rezone the subject properties referred as Parks 4, 6, and 8 from OP3 Public Lands and Institutional with the Missoula Development Park Neighborhood Character Overlay to M1-2 Limited Industrial with the Missoula Development Park Neighborhood Character Overlay based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law in the staff report. This now concludes staff's presentation. Staff and the applicant are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lovelace. Is there anybody from the applicant or the development representative that wishes to speak to this tonight?
Good evening. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'll make this pretty brief. My name is Joe Dennert, D-E-H-N-E-R-T, and I work for IMEG's Missoula office. I am joined this evening by Andrew Hagermeyer and Flanna McClarty with Community and Economic Development for the county. Claire did a good job covering the review criteria and showcasing the proposed rezoning's alignment with the applicable land use policies here. And really the purpose of my really brief presentation is just to provide context on the why behind the rezone and address one specific aspect that was discussed at Planning Board. specifically the original purpose behind these open spaces. Because it was an industrial subdivision, the original subdivision was industrial, they weren't actually utilized for parkland dedication. Instead, the parcels were most likely set up as open space for maybe potential stormwater purpose. Maybe there was the vision for them to serve as a space for future users of the development park to take a walk. This was, almost 30 years ago. Unfortunately, the parcels involved in this rezone request aren't really functioning to serve any of those purposes. They were annexed into the city in 2018, but actually remained under county ownership. And originally, a property owners association for the park was responsible for managing the open spaces and the common facilities. However, since annexation, the association really didn't have enough paying members to continue any sort of proper maintenance of the facilities. So in 2022, all the property owner association members got together and actually voted that the city should take over the maintenance of the stormwater facilities in the development park. And that was spelled out in an interlocal agreement. And included in that agreement was the fact that the county would actually get funds from land sales of certain unnecessary stormwater or open space parcels to pay for the cost of improvements in the park and to help pay for the cost of the actual stormwater conditions assessment that was completed. Those parcels were 4, 6, and 8 slotted in the interlocal agreement. As Claire mentioned, we are in alignment with the growth policy in this area. And if you actually go out there, probably the best looking of these parcels is parcel 6. And one of the planning board members brought up that, hey, that parcel actually looks pretty nice. Even from aerial, you can see it's green and kind of well taken care of. That is one of the parcels that's actually currently under a buy-sell with the adjacent owner because they're already maintaining it. So, the hope here is that whether these parcels are sold to adjacent owners or utilized for other purposes, getting them rezoned to something appropriate that the county can use the funds to reinvest into the area is the entire why. Hopefully that's helpful in understanding the reasoning behind this request, but if you do want any additional context, as Claire mentioned, we're here to field questions, and then, as I mentioned, Andrew Hagemeyer and Flanna McClarty are here, and they'd be able to provide some valuable context as well. So thank you very much for your time, and that is all.
Okay, thank you very much for the additional context, Mr. Dennert. It was helpful. Appreciate the presentation. And we'll go ahead and bring it back to questions from council. Any questions from council on this agenda item this evening? I'm not seeing any here. Just checking to see if there are any council members online that have any questions. Okay. I'm not seeing any questions from council, and our land use and planning chair is not available. We have our vice chair, and that is Chair Becerra, please.
Right. You might pick the good night to not be here and let me read this really long motion. So I move that we adopt an ordinance to rezone 3 parcels legally described as Greenway Park 4 in Block 3 of Missoula Development Park Phase 4, Park 6 in Block 6 of Missoula Development Park Phase 1, and Greenway Park 8 in Block 5 of Missoula Development Park Phase 3D, all located in sections 35 and 36, Township 14 North, Range 20 West, PMM, from OP3 Public Lands and Institutional NC MDP, Missoula Development Park Overlay, to M1-2 Limited Industrial NC MDP, Missoula Development Park Overlay, based on the findings of fact and the conclusions of law in the staff report.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Becerra. I appreciate that. Main motion is on the floor. This opens the public hearing. So we'll go ahead and invite members of the public that wish to speak on this agenda item to come up now. Any members of the public wishing to make comment? I'm not seeing any in the room. Are there any members of the public online that wish to speak to this agenda item? Give it a second here. Okay, not seeing any online either. That wraps up our public comment, and that does then wrap up the public hearing for this agenda item. And I'll bring it back to council for any comments that council members have. Any comments? Yes, Councilor Carlino.
Thanks for the presentation. Generally I'm, supportive of, building inward and up rather than out and urban sprawling. But I am concerned about, rezoning some of our open space zoning designations to allow for development. I think, once we develop there, it'll never, be able to go back to open space. And I think there could be opportunities for pocket parks here in the future. And I'd like to still see part of Missoula, still have green space and be green. So I'm generally not supportive of rezoning open space designations to allow for developments.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Councilor Carlino. Any other comments from council members? Okay, I'm not seeing, Councilor Becerra, please.
I would normally agree with Mr. Carlino. However, this area is it's a highly industrial part of our community, and these open space pieces of land, I think, could be put to a different use without really decreasing the amount of public benefit for the community.
Thank you for your comments. Any additional comments from council members this evening? Okay. I'm not seeing any additional comments then. We'll go ahead and take a roll call vote, please.
All right. 1 second. Voting on item 5.1, the motion to rezone parks 4, 6, and 8 in the Missoula Development Park located on Expressway. Beginning with Anderson.
Yes.
Becerra.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Carlino.
No.
Jones.
Yes.
Jordan. Yes. Nelson.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
And DeSica.
Yes.
That's 9 in favor, 1 opposed. The motion does pass.
Thank you. And Councilor Farmer is online, has her hand raised, letting us know that she's available. So Ms. Trimble, if you can include her in the roll.
Yeah. Ms. Farmer, what's your vote?
Vote yes, thank you. Sorry I'm late to the meeting.
No worries. That's 10 in favor, 1 opposed.
Okay, thank you very much. Welcome, Councilor Farmer. Glad you could join us. Thank you. Folks, if it is okay with you, without objection, if I could move the consent agenda above new business. We have members of the Missoula Police Department here for an item in the consent agenda, and I'm not sure how many of these folks are actually working this evening. And so I want to make sure that we can provide the review of the agenda item and then get them back out onto patrol if that's the case. Thank you, Councilor Campbell, for suggesting that. Is there any objection? Okay, all right, not seeing any then. Ms. Trimble, we're going to go ahead and move the consent agenda, item number 8, up above number 6, and we'll go ahead and carry forth with that consent agenda now.
All right, sounds good. All right, you should be able to see my screen.
Yes, we can.
On this evening's consent agenda, we have a motion to approve accounts payable for checks dated July 22nd, 2025 in the amount of $1,659,083.70. We have a motion to confirm the mayor's appointment of Chris McLeod as Zone 2 representative to the Downtown Business Improvement District for a term beginning immediately and expiring on May 31st, 2029. We have a motion to confirm the mayor's appointment of Lucas Jackson as the at-large member to the Downtown Business Improvement District for a term beginning immediately and expiring on May 31st, 2029. We have a motion to approve the resolution relating to up to $400,000 for pooled special sidewalk, curb, gutter, and alley approach bonds, authorizing the issuance and private negotiated sale thereof, and authorizing the pledge of the revolving fund to the security thereof. We have a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to sign a memorandum of understanding between the city and the MPOA that authorizes agreed to the wage increase for fiscal year 25, fiscal year 26, and fiscal year 27, the term of the current contract, beyond previously agreed COLA increase of 4%. We have a motion to confirm the mayor's appointment of Jennifer Clary and Jonathan Gass to the Building Code Board of Appeals for a term beginning July 1st, 2025 and expiring on June 30th, 2028. We have a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to sign the professional services agreement with IMEG for the Whitaker Alley water main replacement at a cost not to exceed $63,495. We have a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to approve Amendment 1 to the professional services agreement with Newfields for the Takoma Water Quality Improvement Project at a cost not to exceed $69,657. We have a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to sign the Takoma Park construction contract with Three Rivers Landworks at a cost not to exceed $473,869.80. We have a motion to authorize the mayor to execute change order number 1 with the Western Municipal Construction for the Garden City Compost Project at a cost not to exceed $139,537. And finally, we have a series of appointments to the Parks and Recreation Board. We have a motion to confirm the mayor's appointment of Stephen Gasco as a regular member for a term beginning immediately and expiring on April 30th, 2028. A motion to confirm the mayor's appointment of Kelly Sellers as alternate 1 to the Parks and Recreation Board for a term beginning immediately and expiring on April 30th, 2028. And a motion to confirm the mayor's appointment of Tyler Aberson as alternate 2 to the Parks and Recreation Board for a term beginning immediately and expiring on April 30th, 2028.
Thank you very much, Claire. I appreciate that. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak on the consent agenda this evening? I'll start with folks in the room. Anybody wishing to speak on the consent agenda? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody here. And any members of the public wishing to make a comment online? Okay. I'm not seeing any members of the public online. Councillor Campbell, do you wish to separate any items? No, just to speak to it. Okay, great. All right. Any other members of council wishing to separate any of our consent agenda items this evening? Okay. Not seeing any request to separate, but seeing a request to comment. Councillor Campbell.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you so much for moving this forward in the agenda. We get our police officers. I'm not sure how many here are on duty, but it's important, if they have business on the street, that they tend to that as well. So I appreciate the accommodation. I just want to say really quick, I'm glad to see this come to fruition without going through a collective bargaining or arbitration process, rather. It's well-deserved. Like all emergency service here in Missoula, I think both our fire and police are well supported by our community and is reflected in what it is we're about to vote on. I think it's going to help greatly with retention on the police department as well as recruitment. And we just sworn an officer just last week that hails from Denver Police Department with supervisory experience, SRO experience, and it's tough to recruit folks from agencies like that. They're so much larger than ours, and generally those larger cities usually have better compensation packages. So it's great we're in a position that, this town could go out and recruit folks like that and bring them into the fold. And it just, speaks to a high level of service and professionalism that is with the Missoula Police Department.
Well said. Thank you for your comments, Councillor Campbell. And any other council comments before we take a voice vote on this? All right. Ms. Trimble will take a voice vote on the consent agenda when you're ready.
Sounds good. Voting on this evening's consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? And that passes unanimously.
Wonderful. Thanks, everybody, for your support, and have a good evening out there. All right, thank you. We'll come back to our agenda item number 6, new business. Under new business, we have the executive budget presentation by myself here, and I'm going to go ahead and, thank you, folks. I'm going to go ahead and start by reading a very much shortened letter from the mayor. And then Ms. Miller will help me with the PowerPoint presentation when it's time. So I'll go ahead and get started now. When I presented my first city budget last year, I was candid about the challenges that we faced, particularly the structural budget deficit I inherited in the city's general fund. Since then, our team has worked hard to right the ship. While we still have work to do, I'm proud of the meaningful progress that we've made. Thanks to disciplined financial management, we're projecting to spend $2.4 million less for fiscal year 2025 than originally budgeted. Combined with stronger than expected revenue performance, this positions us to end the fiscal year with $3.1 million in our cash reserves, about $1 million more than we anticipated. That's a tangible step forward, rebuilding a healthier financial foundation for Missoula. We're also chipping away at the structural deficit, the gap between what it costs to run the city and what we bring in through ongoing revenues. This budget reduces that gap from $3.1 million to $2.4 million, a 22% improvement over last year. That said, our work is far from over. We are still $1.9 million short of meeting our cash reserve policy, which calls for 7% of ongoing revenues to be held in reserve. And we must stay focused on eliminating the remaining budget deficit. I'm committed to doing so responsibly and thoughtfully without sudden disruptions to city staff or the essential services that our residents rely on. Even as we stabilize our finances, this budget moves us forward in key service areas, often through creative, non-property tax funded strategies. A few highlights. The decision to close the temporary emergency shelter at Johnson Street was a difficult one, but it was necessary given limited resources and the need to protect core services. At the same time, we're continuing to invest in our housing and houselessness program, advancing our goal of establishing housing-focused solutions under the umbrella of the Housing First philosophy here in Missoula. While we weren't able to fund many new requests from the police department, we're making meaningful progress where it matters most, ensuring our officers are fairly and competitively compensated under a new ratified collective bargaining agreement. Our Public Works team will add much-needed street maintenance positions funded entirely through existing gas tax revenues, not new property taxes. We're also making real infrastructure improvements. Projects like the Grant Creek restoration, the Animal Control Facility expansion, the Orange and Craig Signal Project, and the Scotts Phillips Roundabout will strengthen our community and improve quality of life for years to come. And I'm especially excited to break ground on Fire Station number 6, approved by voters last year. This budget reflects our commitment to financial stability, responsible investment, and responsive public service. We've made steady, meaningful progress while maintaining essential services, and we're doing it with the aim of a minimal impact to taxpayers. The rest of this report outlines how we're achieving these goals and where we're going next. So thank you for your engagement and your continued support. And with that, Ms. Miller will go ahead and bring up our PowerPoint presentation to walk us through the rest of the report. Okay. So starting out with the mayor's executive budget fiscal year 2026. Go ahead and hit the next slide there. So we'll start by talking about the areas that we found cost savings, that our departments sought out efficiency improvements and innovations. Again, in order to make sure that we are providing the services that our residents expect and without sudden disruptions to our city staff. Next slide, please. So one of the areas that I've brought forward a cost of living lens, and our departments have been incredibly helpful and dedicated to this. And so I wanted to provide some examples of direct savings that we are seeing in fiscal year 26 budget. Some examples include increased property insurance deductible. We increased the size of our deductible and we're saving $75,000 annually. And still not making it so much that the deductible is large by any stretch of the matter. We had a $10,000 deductible for an organization as large as we are, and so we bumped that up to $25,000, which is very reasonable. And businesses much smaller than ours have a deductible of that size, and we're saving $75,000 annually. We're building department software adjustments and contract renegotiations, so working constantly on that element across all departments. Our short-term rental registrations are projected to raise $200,000 annually. Oops. We have an increased non-tax revenue for our health department licensing. So that is a statute that actually was just passed in 2025 by the legislature, looking at $120,000 of additional annual revenue that hasn't been increased for decades. So that's something that's been in the making for a while. And then information technologies, contract negotiation, and equipment management strategies, around $100,000 of annual savings. And then we have made the difficult decision to close the temporary emergency shelter located at Johnson Street, and that is around a $1.8 million annual savings. So next slide, please. So some of the additional strategies that we are putting in place, and again, these are examples, these are not everything, but these are strategies that we're putting in place in order to, again, maintain essential services that our residents rely on without disruptions to city staff. The innovations, some examples, every general fund job opening that was allowable by the budget that you passed last year, we still required the administration review that prior to the posting of the job. We are consolidating and standardizing specialized software licensing and using special service officers instead of overtime police officers to perform background checks. So it's just one example of how we can utilize a more efficient staffing structure. We're employing long-term planning. Our 5-year pro forma to forecast and planning in our road district funds includes gas tax and grant planning and combining the electrification specialist with open transportation planning positions. So council, you may remember a couple of years ago, you approved a new position for the electrification specialist. That grant was concluding. However, that work is incredibly important for our constituents. And so we were able to figure out how to absorb that into an already allocated full-time employee position in our mobility department in Public Works. Longer-term contracts, we're getting better rates on those contracts. And so there's a number of examples. A lot of those have to do with IT and technology. Some of those are equipment in the police department. And then lastly, an example of an additional strategy is that our funding sources, we're utilizing existing state gas tax funds for 2 new street maintenance staff rather than having the road district assessment pay for those 2 new staff. So we'll be able to actually be able to pay attention to maintenance, a much longer term benefit, we believe, for our residents. And those will be funded through state gas taxes, not property taxes. Next slide, please. So our total expenditures and revenues. Our expenditures in the general fund, our road and park districts, and our fire levy. You can see here that these are the funds that show up on your property tax bill as the portion of your property tax bill associated with the city of Missoula. This is how this is broken out here. Our total expenditures are forecasted at $121,460,959.23. And of course, this presentation will be available for the public on our website, and it currently is now. So folks can refer to this later, but this shows how all of our departments are broken out in terms of these expenditures. Next slide, please. And then in terms of all of our operations, this is how expenditures are broken out here. So again, you can see all the way down from mayor and council at 0.7% and public works mobility at 29.7%, for example. So the wide range of different operations that we have here at the city of Missoula. Next slide, please. So some revenue changes that we have proposed for fiscal year 26. We have proposed fee increases. You saw the presentation last week on this. This would be the implementation of our development fee study. And we are suggesting that we start out small. You saw that there was some room to discuss what fees might make sense to increase. And we are only projecting a $250,000 increase across all different fee types and departments this fiscal year. The other proposed fee increases are inflationary fee increases for parks, utilities, those kinds of things. And those utility rates you approved some months ago because that was a multi-year utility rate increase. Other strategies, the Missoula Redevelopment Agency, they provide direct expense of eligible infrastructure, and we are, again, proposing a remittance there. The two of those in total is $3 million. It's roughly about $1 million in eligible expenses, direct expenses in terms of the various departments that support the activities, and then the remittance. Next slide, please. So our fund balance, this is basically our savings account. This is the thing that you're required to have if you are in conducting sound financial management. It's something that our bonding agencies evaluate us against. Our goal is 7% of ongoing revenues, or about $5.1 million. It's not something that we've been able to maintain at the city here for a few years, but like I mentioned, we are closing the gap. Fiscal year 25, we estimated the fund balance to be 1.3 million higher than the original budget. So that's where we're ending this fiscal year. And again, that is due to disciplined fiscal management across all of our departments, and the staff on our team deserve that credit. And then fiscal year 26, our estimated fund balance will increase slightly, we're not using the fund balance to balance our budget, but instead making sure that we keep that in the bank where it should be. Next slide. So taxes, the bottom line, here we go. Taxes, assessments, and new requests. We anticipate a total of a 3.5% increase in property tax funds. This includes the fire levy, the general fund, and road and park districts. These are dependent on the certifiable tax values, so the revenue numbers that will be available August 4th from the Montana Department of Revenue. And so depending on how those tax values actually shake out, that may affect this number. Individual tax impact will vary by property due to reappraisals from the Montana Department of Revenue. And so this distribution of the 3.5% tax and assessment increase is roughly about a $4.4 million increase. And this is how it breaks out. It shows how the 3.5% is allocated. And just note that some of these projects also receive partial funding from fees or grants or other non-tax sources. So the amount of funding from non-tax sources is not included on this page. We wanted to be able to show where the 3.5% tax and assessment increase will go. As you can see, the vast majority is in wage increases, so about 80% is retaining highly qualified staff. And you can see there the different departments and how that is broken out. The next largest portion of this distribution of tax and assessment increase are contractual increases. These are things like software licensing, I'll say software licensing again, because that tends to be an area where we increase our budgetary need year over year. And we're constantly looking for savings on that. Things like rent increases, utility increases, those kinds of things. That's what makes up that nearly 15% increasing. That new staffing, we have about a position and a half, if not just 2 positions, and we can speak more about that, but very, very little new staffing. And then our health department restructuring, there was 1 position broken into 2, and we need to make sure we hire a business manager for our health department. And you can see there are just a few other expenditures there, including officer wellness app, which is something that helps with our ongoing support for our mental health care for our officers. Next slide, please. So some examples of goals met with non-tax dollars. There's a shift in revenue sources or the use of fund balance in certain districts. So our street maintenance positions I mentioned are funded by the state gas tax. You've seen this in front of you a few times. They requested 6 new street maintenance folks. This last year they've requested 4, and I am proposing that we fund 2. Because of the amount that we have available in our state gas tax, and it enables us to be able to expand this much needed area of service without having to increase the road district or taxes for our residents. Municipal elections are paid from the fund balance. So this is the one exception that we are balancing the budget from the fund balance. Our elections this year are costing around $400,000 for municipal elections. This is an increase from last municipal election due to necessary legislative changes. That's, you'll see that $400,000 in there as a one-time only expenditure for this municipal election. And then an emphasis on meeting city goals, our Affordable Housing Trust Fund allocation, and a shift towards the housing first approach. So a houseless operations specialist and a property engagement specialist, those are funded with grant dollars. These, when anything is not part of the baseline budget, it's funded with one-time dollars, then that is indicated as such when it's brought forward to council for consideration. And so we are able to meet our housing focused approach and our housing first philosophy, utilizing some grant dollars to support those 2 positions. And so our next steps. Council budget deliberations in the Budget and Finance Committee for the next several Wednesdays. So July 23rd, July 30th, August 6th, and the 13th. As mentioned previous, we will have our certified taxable values from the Montana Department of Revenue, or our revenue numbers, available on August 4th. And we're going to need, the staff needs some time to analyze that, in particular because there has been new property tax legislation this past year, and it'll take a little bit of time to analyze those numbers against the budget. We have a public hearing proposed opening August 4th, and then that will continue August 11th and 18th. So for members of the public, want to make sure that you recognize that July 23rd and 30th, August 6th, 13th, August 4th, 11th, and 18th are all opportunities for public comment on our budget. And then we are asking and hoping for an expected budget adoption on August 18th. So that concludes my budget presentation this evening. And before I hand it over for motion on the floor to set the public hearing, Mr. Bickle, you have your hand raised.
I just wanted to mention to council, as the public deliberations and review of the executive budget starts, our finance department, Lee Griffin, will give a presentation on committee on Wednesday to talk about there's going to be a bunch more documents available. There's a lot there on the budget website now, and there's going to be, I think there's learning a lot more on there. And so there'll be a kind of a reorientation for council on that and the public at committee on Wednesday.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that as part of our staff presentation this evening. And before we move on to the main motion, are there any questions from council on what was presented? Councilor Cheryl?
I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to add a couple things, being
Please.
the Budget and Finance Chair.
You bet.
I know that you read the dates that we will have deliberations in Budget and Finance, which are the 23rd, I know we were talking about having the 30th off. We may or may not be able to have the 30th off, August 6th and August 13th. But we have asked that amendments to the budget be in by August 4th. So we can compile those, put them all together, look at all of the amendments as one, because obviously they affect each other, and just with the final adoption on the 18th. So,
Okay.
and then I'll just make a motion when you're ready for that.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Counselor Jordan?
Thank you. I'm just curious what the houseless program specialist person will be doing. I know you mentioned the landlord liaison position, but the other position is new, and I'm curious what the job functions will be.
Thank you for your question. I appreciate that. Mr. Bickle?
Actually, all of the positions in the new in the budget that you'll see on the new request list are existing positions. The newest one is that property retention specialist that started in this fiscal year with the free up of another FTE that was previously incorporated in CPDI's budget. So these are actual retention of staff, but the funding sources are changing.
All righty. And Counselor Campbell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a few things that come to mind looking at your presentation. Thank you, by the way. The matter of the deductible being raised to 25,000. I just think back to my time on the police department. One of my final responsibilities was assessing vehicles that are damaged, police vehicles, and inevitably we get estimates. We go out and, Scott over there takes care of those estimates, but invariably they come in well above even the $10,000 estimate as it was. I'm just curious, number one, where the money comes from up that we use up to and including the deductible. I mean, we have to fill, presumably what's being proposed here, $25,000. Where does that money come from if there's a claim, if there's a damage to a vehicle, be a police vehicle or some other vehicle? Where's that money come from? And then I would like, I don't think you'd have this off the cuff, but I would like to see, like over the past fiscal year, what vehicles, from a vehicle standpoint, as far as damage, how much we ended up paying to fulfill the deductibles and what that would be if a $25,000 deductible were applied. So basically go back, look at fiscal year 25, we paid in deductibles and presume that was a $25,000 cap, what that cost would have been had we been at 25,000 all along, if that makes sense to you.
As part of the analysis that our finance team did related to raising this deductible, they did go back and look at history related to the number of claims that would affect us and how that would be done. And so as part of the presentations on Wednesday, they can bring some more detailed information, but then they can show that, like, yeah, this is actually $75,000 in savings. Now, to answer just a couple of your questions though, Counselor, there is a reserve that's in part of the general fund that is for insurance and the insurance related items. And so that item remains in the budget, but the premium piece of that is a decrease. And so that's there. But also the originating departments that are, outside the general fund too. So if there's like claims that are in the utilities or the parks department, they have to handle out of their own cash reserve, and each of those departments have their own cash reserve policies for these types of events. And so that's where those would come from. So it's not all borne by the general fund. It is spread about between how the departments and where that particular insured event happened.
Yeah, thank you for that, Dale. I appreciate that parse out a little bit. So I look forward to your other information. I'll follow up if I may.
Sure, you bet.
So I think it was like the third or fourth slide, additional strategies. And we talked about background checks. I don't know if we could pull that up, but you mentioned overtime officers. I'm just wondering what you meant by overtime officers, or are police officers doing background checks on overtime?
Well, Mr. Bickle, would you speak to that?
Yeah, that's my understanding. It was a change in the use of officers' time. So rather than use an officer to come in on overtime, they're using these special assignments to be able to do that, to save some costs there. Just some of the things that teams are looking for constantly, just to try to save some taxpayer dollars.
Thank you. And then finally,
Yeah.
$121 million total expenditures for this FY. What was the total for FY '25? Just curious.
Well, I do happen to know that the total, I don't know the number, but the total expense increase in the executive budget today is about a 4.7% increase over last year, versus the, against the proposed 3.5% tax increase. So that's all in, right? That's utilities, that's construction, that's all of that's expenses across.
Thank you. That's all I've got for now. I'm
Great.
sure I'll come up with a few more.
I hope so.
somewhere
Thank
during the
you.
process.
Thank you for your questions. I appreciate that. Any other questions from council before we hear the main motion? All right. Councilor Cheryl, thank you.
There'll be plenty of time to ask questions. So I recommend setting a public hearing for August 4th and August 11th on resolutions relating to the fiscal year 2026 budget, community improvement program, CIP, resolutions increasing certain fees, a resolution establishing the method of levy, voted mills per HB 231 and SB 542, permissive medical levy, and the work plans and budget for the Missoula Local Government Building Special District Downtown Business Improvement District, Tourism Business Improvement District, Park District Number 1, Road District Number 1, Street Maintenance District Number 1, and assessments relating to the street lighting improvement districts. Final vote will be taken on August 18th, 2025.
Excellent. Thank you very much. The main motion is made, and now we'll open this up for public comment. If there's any public comment on this agenda item, come on up now. Okay, I'm not seeing any in the audience. Are there any members of the public online that wish to speak to this agenda item? I'm not seeing any members of the public online. So that will wrap up our public comment. Brings it back to council. Any council comments before a vote is taken to set the public hearings? Councilor Cheryl.
Just quickly, this is, as we said, just setting the public hearing, and there will be plenty of time for questions and amendments and so on and so forth. So we're just opening things up.
Thank you for reinforcing that. Appreciate that. This is just the start of a thorough process. All right. Seeing no other council comments, then we'll go ahead and take a voice vote on this, please. Ms. Trimble.
Sure, voice vote on item 6.2, a motion to set the public hearing for fiscal year 26 for August 4th and August 11th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That passes unanimously.
Okay. Thank you very much, folks. Thanks. Looking forward to the continuing conversation. Appreciate it. And again, I want to thank all members of the city staff for their continued hard work on the fiscal year 26 budget and the management of fiscal year 25's budget. Thank you, Ms. Miller. Appreciate it. Okay. We've already handled our consent agenda, so we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is number 9 under regular business. And that is under Housing Redevelopment and the Community Programs Committee Report. We have item 9.1 DB. This is the Riverfront Triangle Fox Site Sale and Development. This item was reviewed in committee last week on the 16th. It had a majority vote for a due pass this evening, but it was not unanimous. That's why it's not on the consent agenda. So it is here in committee reports. We do not have any additional staff report to provide, no new information. So in terms of where we'll start this evening, during our committee meeting, there appeared to be some additional questions from council members. So I want to go ahead and see if there's any additional questions from council members that we can answer this evening. So again, this was last Wednesday. And in order to keep the council schedule going, the committee schedule, we had a couple maybe unanswered questions. Any council questions? Councilor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, as I just stuck candy in my mouth, but well. So yeah, you did have a few questions left over from committee last time. And let's see, I'll start off with an easy one here, I think. So one of the questions that was brought up was with the bridge or proposal for a bridge or planning for a bridge. I had asked how this relates to discussions we've had for some time now about the possibility of using the trestle bridge from the railroad over by Scott and Broadway and acquiring or leasing that land or that property long-term, developing a pedestrian bridge there. I'm wondering, with this development agreement, are we just nixing the idea of using a trestle bridge as a pedestrian bridge, or where does that stand?
Excuse me, Ellen Buchanan, Missoula Redevelopment Agency. We're still working with Montana Rail Link to see if there's any possibility of connecting that portion of the Bitterroot Branch Trail across the river. I think the two bridges, if we have adequate revenue in the Riverfront Triangle District, the two bridges would serve really different purposes. One of the major attractions of having a bridge from Riverfront Triangle across to the park on the south side of the river is there's a serious parking constraint on the south side of the river between the stadium, Silver Park, the development that's happening at the old Sawmill District. And if we can begin to create a relief valve there with some of the excess parking that could be built at Riverfront Triangle in conjunction with this hotel project, I think it would benefit both sides of the river. The trestle really completes a gap in the Bitterroot Trail system. And that's a serious commuter trail. So I think that they serve very different purposes if we can afford to do it.
Yeah, thank you, Ellen, for that. One more.
Sure.
So going back to the MRA memo that we had available to us during committee last week, there's a clause in there that talks about the cost for plaza and trails in phase 3 may be financed through AHD's construction lender under mutually agreed upon terms and will be reimbursed by the city/MRA. AHD will be reimbursed for soft and hard costs, phase 3, as well as any interest paid to the construction lender attributable phase 3 bank financing. I'm just wondering, since we can't forecast what interest rates may be down the line when we get to this point, are there any sideboards or side rails in place that place limits on city exposure to interest rates in excess of what might be financially feasible on behalf of the MRA or what we have available for bonding capacity in that regard?
Dale Bickle, CAO. There are some things, and just to clarify some things, that ability to have developer financing of public infrastructure is if there isn't enough increment or other city resources. And if there's a pretty high interest of trying to get all of the infrastructure done that really helps support the Riverfront Triangle and the hotel in particular. So the trail and the plaza, rather than try to do those later after it's constructed, it'd just be convenient, cheaper, so while everything is, that's the best time to do it. So a couple of things. One is what we, as the developers go through their financing packages, we get to agree related to the level of carrying costs, right? So it's just not an automatic. It's going to be reasonable and customary, and we get to review that. But there are other financial instruments that we could consider too to just to mitigate our risk. Those come at a cost, a small cost, but we could actually essentially, some types of interest options contracts and stuff that we could actually use to try to mitigate our interest rate risk. Those are all possibles that we could look at as the project continues and we see where we're at through in that design process.
Okay, and that's actually all the questions I had. I just, as I said before in committee, part of my concern is limiting the city exposure to, the what ifs that might come down the line and, changes or evolving conditions, that sort of thing. So I appreciate those responses. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions and thank you for your concern around mitigating the risk. That's definitely good. Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Davis. Building on Councillor Campbell's question, I wasn't here last week for the committee. Apologies for my absence, but wondering about the environmental cleanup costs. And it looks like not to exceed $50,000, we're fully responsible. So in the event that we start digging for this underground parking garage and we do find a bunch of contaminated materials, I just wonder if there's an environmental insurance policy or an escrow account or some other way that we can mitigate some of those unforeseen expenses should we find some contaminated surface under there.
Ellen Buchanan, Missoula Redevelopment Agency. Let me take first shot at that, and then I think the city attorney wants to speak to it. In 2005, MRA paid to have that entire site excavated. It had formerly been in the late 1800s into the early 1900s. I think it was the city dump. And so we excavated, I think it was in excess of 30,000 yards of material. We brought that site back up to its current elevation using, if you will, virgin dirt that was coming out of a construction project on the university campus. I think it might have been the law school, but one of the buildings that was built in the early, around 2004 and 5. We did subsequent testing on that. It's had a phase 2 environmental done, and there is no excavation needed for the parking structure. That's at the base floor level. There would be some relative to foundations, but that's about it. So we're pretty confident. I mean, we put the dirt there, we know where it came from, and we've tested it. So we're pretty confident that there should be no responsibility that way. But with that, I'll turn this over to Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan Sudbury with the City Attorney's Office. Yeah, we spent a lot of time negotiating this term, given the possible risks to the city and minimizing, potential outlays or city liability with respect to some unknown that's out there. So you can see the kind of final language that's in the agreement gets into this issue. We don't want funds expended over a certain amount without our approval. And then there's an off-ramp for the city in the event that they discover something out there that nobody knew about. And for whatever reason it's there, maybe it came from somewhere else or it's beneath the fill that we brought in and they need to excavate it out, or they don't want, the developer doesn't want to be responsible for it. There is the off-ramp for it to get out of we just kind of unwind the whole deal. We may have to pay for some of their costs, but in the event that the possibility for remediation or the possibility of costs of remediation far outweigh the costs that the developer has into the project at that point, we may just decide to say, we can't pay, an exorbitant amount to excavate this and deal with, potentially hazardous material because that's really expensive and can be kind of a time and cost sink. So we just kind of would agree at that point to unwind the deal. We'd pay the developer for some of their costs and the city could get out of the deal, and we'd have to figure out an alternative use that doesn't require disturbing those buried materials. So we did, I think, both the developer team and the city team spent a lot of time thinking about this. We could investigate the possibility of environmental insurance or something like this. My understanding, and I think Dale seconded this, is that it would be, for something like this, fairly expensive and probably not worth the risk that we think is out there, given that we do have a fairly decent sense of the characterization of the subsurface soil, just because it used to be a dump and we excavated all that out and brought stuff back in. So we're comfortable with the level of risk associated with the unknown unknowns, but it's impossible to predict the future, and we think that we've mitigated the risk to a reasonable degree with respect to the language in the agreement now about these, like I talked about, the off-ramp. So it's not ideal, and I know the developers were concerned about this issue, so we tried to work around and come up with a solution that would, leave everybody with a certain, nobody's happy with the outcome, it leaves some risk on both sides, but given the potential for that problem and the cost associated with it, it's sort of the best, we think we've negotiated the best outcome for both sides, and if we discover something that's there, we'll have to figure out what to do at that point, but we don't think we're on the hook for, at this point, millions of dollars at that point. We would just sort of walk away from the deal.
Got it. Thanks. Follow up?
Absolutely.
This one's, I think, for Ellen. This is about the deferred purchase price and the zero interest note. I'm just curious why the city agreed to a zero interest promissory note instead of requiring interest or some form of indexed return. Is this a common way of doing public-private partnerships, I guess?
I'm probably going to defer to Dale or Ryan on that, but I think with some of the larger projects that MRA undertakes, there really isn't a common way. Every deal is kind of crafted for the project that we're working on.
Well, and I would say that this, I mean, rather, I wouldn't think of it, I mean, it's in terms of it as a promissory note, but you could think of it as a really kind of a two-phase approach just to the purchase. So at closing, which is estimated to be, should council approve the transaction, you can move to closing in this calendar year. And that would provide that initial $1.7 million payment to the city. And then, but that gets the developer site control, and some comfort that, all right, we've got a project. They'll take that time to invest into the real design of the project. Understand that. And then prior to actual construction starting, at building permit, they make that final $2.3 million payment to the city. So it's not like a 20-year note or a mortgage, something. It's just helping that project cash flow through that design process. So it's going to be at 18 months or some such type of time frame.
Got it. And then one more, if you don't mind.
Not at all. Go ahead.
Maybe also for Ellen, MRA. Trying to get at kind of the bonding capacity of the riverfront URD in relation to the projected balance over the next 10 years. How will this project affect the riverfront URD and the balance over the next 10 years potentially? I mean, it's going to increase with increment, but what will it do to the bonding capacity of that URD?
Ellen Buchanan. Well, I mean, as the building comes out of the ground, it's going to increase revenue that's coming into the district. The last time we had bonding capacity run for that district was in April, and of course, interest rates are still varying all over the place, and there are other factors, but at that point, we had about $3.3 million in bonding capacity. That bonding capacity basically comes from Stockman Bank because their property taxes greatly exceed the debt service on the bonds that were issued to facilitate that project. What we intend to do on the hotel is work with the Department of Revenue to make sure that as that building is coming out of the ground, because it's going to take more than a year to build, and values are assessed as of January 1 of the year, we will work with DOR to put a value on that construction at whatever point it's at on January 1st of whatever given year we're talking about. We've done that, a similar thing on other projects where we were tight on bonding capacity and needed additional revenues to come in, and it's worked out successfully. I mean, Department of Revenue's happy to do that.
That's great. And then just one more, sorry.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Again, missed last Wednesday, so trying to catch up here. This is in the land use agreement section. There's a lot of public benefits outlined in there, the trail, the plaza, obviously the millions of dollars to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. But there are no permanent covenants that ensure like permanent, long-term public access. And I'm just wondering if there's a need for that. I know that there's a management plan or operating plan that will need to be finalized, hoping there will be a public process where people can potentially look at charrettes and weigh in on what that plaza could hold. But I'm just wondering if there is a need for some kind of a covenant that really like defines long-term permanent public access.
So if, through the vacated Owen Street right away, there'll be an easement for public access in the public plaza. So there will be long permanent public access to those areas. And then, of course, the parcel that's along the river between the site that we're discussing and the river, that is still owned by the city. So the city and the public will have access from under Orange Street, where the Riverfront Trail is now, through the city parcel along the riverfront, and then back up to the former Owen Street right away to West Front Street. Then hopefully when the property to the west develops, there'll be further provision for public access through there along the riverfront, through a new Riverfront Trail, as well as a greenway on West Front Street. So there will be permanent public access to those sites through the Fox parcel, that one that we're discussing for sale tonight. There won't be permanent public access through the hotel facility, obviously, but through the adjacent properties, there will be.
Awesome. That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, you bet. I'm glad you had a chance to get your questions answered. Any other members of council have questions? Not seeing any. Hands raised, I think, are leftovers. So looks like we had an opportunity for council members to get outstanding questions answered. And so with that, I'd like to carry forward with Councillor Jones, the chair of the HRCP committee, and we'll hear these motions, and then we'll hear some amendments and opportunity for public comment. I think there's a number of folks here this evening wishing to make public comment on this agenda item. Councillor Jones.
Great, thank you. We've got 3 motions on this topic tonight. The first is to approve the agreement for the purchase and sale of real property between the City of Missoula and Averill Hospitality LLC, and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement. The second motion is to approve the development agreement between the City of Missoula, the Missoula Redevelopment Agency, and Averill Hospitality LLC, and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement. And the third motion is to approve the Fox Triangle Land Use and Development Requirements Agreement between the City of Missoula and Averill Hospitality LLC, and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement.
Okay, Councillor Jones, thank you very much. I'd like to proceed with known amendments. So we've had Councillor Carlino, you have forwarded 4 amendments, and without your objection, I'm wondering if it would be okay if we package the amendments per agreement. So the first one that you sent on Friday had a 1% donation, or Thursday, an operating agreement, and that would be relative to the development agreement. And then the amendments that you submitted today, the project labor agreement and the labor peace agreement, that would pertain to the purchase and sale agreement. So would it be okay if we heard them all, but package those 2 in terms of hearing the 1% donation, the operating agreement? We'll receive public comment on that. And then vote on that amendment package, and then go to the other, since they're for 2 separate agreements. Is that okay?
Yeah, I'm happy to present them together, but separate votes for each amendment, right?
Certainly,
But
yeah, absolutely.
that works great.
Yep, great. Thank you for clarifying. All right. All right, so we have the main motions on the floor, and before we take public comment on anything, we'll hear the amendments that have been proposed. And so, Councillor Carlino, if you want to go ahead and start with your amendments, and we'll start with that 1%.
Yes, let me share my screen.
Okay.
To make it a little bit easier. So the first amendment is just some proposed changes to the 1% of revenue going towards the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I've got 2 different versions depending on what City Council would prefer. But the first one is just to say, rather than it only going towards the Affordable Housing Trust Fund for 10 years and then going to a donation to a nonprofit, that we would do it in perpetuity, have that 1% of revenue go towards the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to ensure that we, have funds year after year for that, crucial city resource that typically we fund not at the highest rate that our community needs. And then if a second version of that would, an alternative version, I suppose, would be that after the 10 years of the 1% going towards the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, rather than the developer choosing what option for local charitable or community organization, the city would have the choice, and we could work with the developer on what organization we'd like to give it to. And then the second amendment is about the public plaza, and I don't know what's going on with my mic, but basically just to, I think this is already the intent of all of us, but just to make sure that the public plaza will be open to the public, and still allows for the developer to use it for events for a short period of less than 24 hours at a time, and that any changes to the operating agreement would have to be agreed upon by the city. So just want to try and get that in writing, but that might already be the intent. So those are my two for the development agreement.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Carlino. So, Councillor Jones, I'll turn back to you. These are amendments proposed for the development agreement, and so that item is the second motion. And so I'll go ahead and open it up for questions from council, if that's okay. Any questions from council on these amendments? Councillor Savage.
Excuse me, thank you. I have a question about the plaza piece of it, and I fully understand the reason for this amendment, and I actually agree with you. I am curious though if that's something that is usually handled in like a development agreement that will be forthcoming, and I'm curious about that from staff.
Yeah, I think it's the goal of the project to bring this agreement, sort of operating agreement for the public plaza, back to City Council after we kind of know what the plaza is going to look like. So the developer's still, planning once, if we have success in the meeting tonight, then to move into their sort of design and plan stage. And then at that point, we'll know kind of what the operating agreement needs to cover with respect to the public plaza. And then the goal will be to bring that back to City Council. There'll be, like any other agreement that comes before City Council, you'll have a chance to ask questions about it, tweak the language of it if there's something in it that that you don't like, or to ensure that language like this exists in the operating agreement. But it's certainly, I think everybody's understanding that the language that's presented here would be part of any operating agreement for the public plaza.
Thank you.
All right, you bet. And Councillor Sherrill.
Yeah, thanks. I think Ms. Savage asked my question. At what point in the process, I have two questions, if that's okay. I'm just going to play off what she had asked. At what point in the process would the operating or management agreement come back? And in your opinion, as our attorney, that seems like that would be, in my experience, that would be the more appropriate place for an amendment like this, or for this kind of language. Is that your opinion?
I'll answer the second question first. Whether it's more appropriate there or not, I think it maybe makes more sense if City Council wanted the surety that before they decided they wanted to sell the property, that they had this particular term ironed out up front, then I think that's well within City Council's discretion. And then of course I forgot the first question. I'm sorry.
I was kind of just playing.
Well, I'll buy you some time, because in the meantime, I see Mr. Bickle has his hand raised, so he might be adding to that.
Right.
Well, I wanted to raise just kind of fact on the ground in this, is that there's quite a big grade change on that Owen Street right away from the river up. And so it's not just to be a big flat plaza. And so it's really hard to say at what is going to be the main uses of the plaza until we really get through a design process. So, obviously it's going to be the major connection and the start of the Owen Street Greenway that would go from, the river all the way to the West Side, North Side pedestrian bridge. But but the ability to have like a big terrace park style flat area is going to be really difficult just because of those grades. And you saw some of the original renderings had some terracing and stuff to accommodate that. But so that is part of this, is just how is that going to be used, is part of this. And that operating agreement will, after the design, we'll be able to kind of dial that in.
Thanks for that additional context. President Cheryl?
Thanks. I appreciate that as well, Dale. My question, which I was
I
reminded.
got it. I remember it.
Okay, so
On the timing.
I was reminded of it.
I don't think we have a set time in mind. I think maybe it probably makes a lot of sense to do it before the developer breaks ground and construction, just so that they know what they're getting into. If there was elements added to the operating agreement that for whatever reason they couldn't live with or something like that. But so that probably makes the most sense, sort of after the design, while they're getting their ducks in a row for construction to begin, then we bring the operating agreement back to City Council for that.
That makes sense to me after design. One more question. The donation to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, it was a voluntary donation, is that correct?
I think I'll just answer it because I'm already speaking. Yeah, the developer brought that concept to the city. It's something that I understand that they do at their facility up in Whitefish Lake at their hotel, and they say it works really well and it works for the community up there. But yeah, that wasn't something that we had approached them from the city's perspective. We were looking to secure funds to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund as part of the purchase price, and we knew that we couldn't put the full purchase price up front into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund based on the need to finance some of the public infrastructure, but there would be sort of an initial payment into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, the balance going in at the end of construction, or once the bonding is paid off, depending on financing. And I think the developer took that concept and ran with it and said, we think we have something that we could do that would be a benefit to the public as well, and it would additionally support that, the goal of getting funds into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So yeah, it was brought to us. It was their concept, and we thought it was a great idea.
Thank you.
All right, you bet. And Councillor Anderson.
Bless you. Thanks so much, Madam Mayor. My question is for Ellen. Last week when you gave the presentation, you spoke about the public plaza as something that we as the city are having a stake in outside of just the management portion. So if you could talk a little bit about that, because I think it basically ensures that we will, they can't not go ahead with the management agreement. So it kind of guarantees that they will come before us again, and we'll have an opportunity to really put that scaffolding in place to make sure that it's a public benefit.
So are you referring to the design of the plaza?
No, the actual, okay, maybe it was Mr. Bickle who said it in committee. It was like all the various funding components, and there was, in regards to the plaza, that is MRA money, or am I hallucinating? It could be.
No. I think I understand where you're going. What we envision is that we have a limited amount of funding that we can put into the infrastructure up front. And most of that infrastructure is absolutely essential to opening and operating a hotel. The plaza we've identified as being in phase 3. I think everybody understands, the developers and city staff, that the most efficient way to do this plaza is to do it in conjunction with the rest of the infrastructure that's going in and construction of the hotel. We're not going to have enough MRA funding at that point to fund that. The hotel won't be generating enough revenue to increase our bonding capacity enough to just build that. So what the developers have agreed to is that they will build it and defer our paying them for it until the project has created, or other projects that this may incentivize at Riverfront Triangle, are generating enough revenue to service that debt. So it's a mutually agreed upon way of financing that they were generous enough to agree to. Dale, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I I think he shook his head no.
Apparently
Shook his
not.
head, yes.
Okay.
All right. No, that, I appreciate that because it does demonstrate that there is a connective, like the plaza will be built. We will have a management agreement. This, there's kind of a timeline for that being built out. So thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for your question. Counselor Jones.
Sure. I think this is for Ellen. I just want to get a little bit more context on the record around the 1% donation. And just my understanding is the original RFP that goes back years certainly never called for anything like this. But in fact, that now we're in 2025 and this is being worked through. It was just a completely voluntary idea that the developers brought to the city of Missoula, and then it was all discussed. But I guess just want you to clarify those things, but then my question also goes to the fact that we now have an affordable housing trust fund donation policy, for lack of a better name, but that is a more recent creation, and this 1% voluntary donation that was contemplated before we created our policy is actually going to benefit the trust fund a lot more. So could you just speak to that?
Sure. Of course, when we originally issued the RFP a number of years ago, we did not have an affordable housing trust fund, and we did not have a workforce housing program in the redevelopment agency. We do have that now, and we have a housing need that far exceeds what it did back then. But the negotiations around this particular project were initiated, and this current iteration was initiated well before that workforce housing program was put into place. And one of the components of the workforce housing program is that if a project receives TIF funding but does not provide any affordable housing, 10% of an amount equal to 10% of their TIF grant for sidewalks and streets and whatever infrastructure or deconstructions needed would be donated by the developer to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Well, this project preceded that. And, we had discussions about how do we benefit the housing needs here, and this was the solution that the Aprils came up with, and it far exceeds a 10% of the TIF investment in what is needed to serve the hotel. So it's a big win for the city.
Thanks.
For housing.
I just wanted to get some more clarification around that, so appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. You bet. And Counselor Becerra.
Just going back to the public plaza, during the development and design phase, I'm assuming there'll be coordination with city parks and recreation, just because we have a downtown master plan and goals that we want to achieve. Is that a good assumption?
Yes, that's a good assumption. It's a good assumption. It's in one of the agreements, although at this point I've read them all so many times. It's land use agreement or the development agreement that they're required to check in with work with the Parks and Recreation Department generally, and then check in at specific intervals. I think it's 30, 60, 90% design phase. So, and I believe Nathan McLeod from Parks and Recreation sat in our work team and helped negotiate those terms. So Parks is on board with that provision, yeah.
All right. You bet. Counselor Jordan, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering if it's okay to ask the developer a question at this point in time.
I think that's acceptable. You bet.
Thank you. I'm curious, for whoever's there representing the developer, if you would be open to continuing the 1% donation to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund after 10 years. I know we kind of touched on this earlier, but just curious what your thoughts are and if you've got any additions to add to that.
Thank you for your question, Counselor Jordan. And so we have the developers coming up now, the hotel hospitality.
Everybody, this is Sean Averill,
You can
part of the
adjust that
development team.
microphone.
So the theory on that is it's going in perpetuity, the 1%, but it's how do you know in 10 years what the current need will be? So we came up with the 10 years. The theory is we'll reassess it in 10 years, see what the current need is. It's, how do you know in 25 years that's the need the city's going to have? So that was what we came up with, and I anticipate it would stay, but you never know. There could be another need. There could be something else. So that's the theory behind it. It's got to be a charity. There's definitions of charity, so it has to be into a public need for the city. So we'd like to just maybe have the option to reassess it, but that's, I think, the best plan for everybody is our thoughts. So thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Can I ask a follow-up, please, Mayor?
Sure.
Yeah, so thank you for that. That does make sense. So it does sound like though you're willing to commit to donating 1% in perpetuity to some charity of some kind. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is how it's written actually now. So I think you are protected by the language that's currently in the plan. It did not end in 10 years, is our understanding, is how it's written right now. I think
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. You bet. Any additional questions from council members? Not seeing any additional hands raised, so we have heard Councilor Carlino's amendments. We've heard council comments. Now we'll open it up to public comment on these amendments. Any members of the public wishing to make comment on these amendments? So come on up, please share your name if you will. Okay, not a problem. Any other members of the public wishing to make comment on these these amendments, please share your name. Max of 3 minutes per comment, please. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody in the audience. Is there anybody online that wishes to make comment? All right, come on up, Mr. Montana.
Big K, Montana. Did I hear this right in regards to the rail link bridge being part of a possible option to this perspective? Better hold the line on that one. That's owned by Rail Link. And 93 is getting a lot more pressure and pressure. And we're supposed to have a increase of population. How much in the next 20 years? Is that rail link bridge sound for commuter rail? Think about it. It's not owned by the city. It'll never be owned by the city. Rail link, part of Montana, and the federal transportation owns that link. And if that bridge is sound for light rail, heavy rail, light rail of some sort, you can bank on it because of 93 is getting a lot of pressure.
Thank you, Carl. Any other members of the public wishing to make comments on these amendments? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody and I'm not seeing anyone online. So, I'm sorry. Oh, there was. Thank you. Oh, good. All right, we have a phone number of 406-728-7815. Can you unmute yourself now, please?
Hello, this is Carrie Schreiber calling in. Is the audio working?
Yes, it is, Carrie. We can hear you.
Great. I was watching online and it dropped, so I called in to make comment. If this 1% is able to go to some sort of charity after 10 years, how will those needs be assessed and who would be the stakeholders at the table deciding what charity that would go to? I guess that's more of a question than a comment, but it seems clear with all the nonprofits and charities that are out in the world that, and here in Missoula in particular, that that we need some discernment as to where that 1% would go if it's no longer going to be going to the affordable housing. And yes, and hello to Mr. Averill. Our father served in the Guards together, and your dad actually used to stay at our family house. And we also were the lending force in buying Whitefish Lake Lodge. So we go back a few different ways here. And I'm glad to see that you are investing in the community as you become a part of our business community here. And I'd just like to have some assurance that the public benefit of that 1% will be discerned by the public and not just on a whim of what the developer might want to do in 10 years.
Thank you for your comments, Carrie. And Ryan Brewer, online. You can unmute. We're ready for your comment, please.
There we go. I think you have me now?
We can hear you.
Thank you very much. No, in terms of, I just have a couple of comments. One is in terms of the 1%. I think that is a highly innovative and really useful addition to being able to provide affordable housing for the 10 years and then in perpetuity. I was under the impression it was only for 10 years. So in perpetuity seems to me like such a great gift to the community for any charity that it would receive, it. I think that is just such a win for the city, and in general, I'm so excited for the project to repurpose a piece of property that's been vacant for, gosh, almost as long as I can remember. And that's it.
Thank you for your comments, Ryan. All right. Anybody else online wishing to make comments on these amendments? All right. I'm not seeing any additional members of the public wishing to make comment on the amendments, excuse me. So the main motion for the development agreement has proposed amendments. We've heard public comment in regards to those. And before we go ahead and move forward then with a vote, I'm looking at Mr. Sudbury for the flow of events here. We'll go ahead and take a vote on the amendment for that particular request. And I see Councilor Carlino has his hand raised for Councilor Carlino. Do you wish to speak to this before we ask council to vote on the amendments?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to the amendments. Isn't that now a good time?
Absolutely,
Okay,
you bet.
So it sounds like we've got no objection from the developer about the public plaza amendment. Correct me if I'm wrong, but so I think, it's important that we put this in here now. I think it's important that we put it in the development agreement now, just to help protect public use of this plaza. We're paying, a lot of public dollars towards this, and I think it's important that we have this in writing. And I think people from our community are really going to enjoy this plaza. For the First Amendment about the 1% donation towards the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, it sounds like perhaps there's more agreement upon maybe the alternative version I wrote, B, that basically says, after 10 years, the developer can donate that 1% to a charitable or community organization. And my amendment is basically just to say with the agreement of the city. So in 10 years, we can still reevaluate, not only letting the developers pick where that would go, but having the city and developers work together to decide. And certainly I don't think the need for Affordable Housing Trust Fund funds is going to go away anytime soon. We're going to be needing that probably forever. But I think, perhaps still reassessing after 10 years, like they suggested, makes sense to me. But I just want to add in this clause that says with agreement from the city, rather than giving it all for the developer to decide. So I'm going to go with moving the alternative amendment the B version for the 1% donation, and then also move the amendment for the public plaza as written.
Okay, thank you for your statement and clarification, Councilor Carlino. Other council comments on these amendments? Councilor Sherrill.
I just want to say that I think that putting this agreement that is before
we've done the design of the plaza, putting this in there, we're gonna have an option as council to review that agreement, the details in the management agreement. So I'm not gonna support that. I don't think it belongs there. And I think we are gonna have an opportunity to do that.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Counselor Anderson.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. That's exactly what my comments were going to be, that I'm looking forward to the design process and the subsequent management agreement, which is kind of the appropriate order of operations. But I feel very confident that the city is a partner in the plaza because we are helping pay for it. So therefore, we will be having a guaranteed a seat at the table, and various steps already laid out for the provisions for when parks will engage and verify. So I think what is laid out now currently is appropriate, and as the process moves forward, the next steps will guarantee opportunities for us to weigh in and solidify as more of the concept becomes fleshed out. And I appreciate the developers' commitment to the community and giving the 1%, as Ms. Buchanan said, it's far more than what we would have asked for. So I feel like they have already committed their demonstration working with the city. And so I'm not going to be in support of putting further structure around their commitment to the ongoing 1%, which they have said is in perpetuity. And there is some flexibility on when and where it goes to other places. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for your comments. Counselor Jones, your hand down. Okay, and got it. Counselor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I'm not going to be in support of the amendments at this time either. I just feel, as you know, Councilwoman Sherrill and Councilwoman Anderson mentioned, I think the here and now is not the place for this. I think there'd be opportunity for that. I just think to start off with in the process with this development agreement to maintain as much overall latitude in the process as possible. And as things coalesce further down the line, there'll be time for, you know, things like this to come, you know, possibly to fruition, you know, work with the developer. But I think at the get-go, we need to maintain that latitude.
Thanks for your comments. Any other council comments on these amendments? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised. And so Councilor Carlino, we have 2 amendments in this batch, right? We've got the 1% revenue towards the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and option B on that. And then we have, of course, the Plaza one, and we'll take those votes separately.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. The first amendment was just, that the city would have to agree to where the contribution's going after those 10 years.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. And Ms. Trimble, if you could put the amendments back up on the screen as we go ahead and do a roll call vote on the amendments, that would be helpful.
Give me 1 second.
No problem.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. Ms. Davis?
I'm sorry, yes.
There was an email from Sandy Vasica and I think Kristen Jordan that they're having a hard time hearing it. The sound seems to be cutting out, so I just want to get that on your radar.
Okay.
I think they just sent it, so.
Oh, thank you for raising that up. Okay. So we've got we have council members online that are having difficult hearing. Councilor Jordan, can you hear me right now?
Yeah, Mayor, I can hear you. It's Daniel and Bob's mics, and apparently my audio is causing some issues as well. Bob just texted me and said to talk quieter, but I'm talking pretty quietly already.
Okay.
Yeah, apologies. This is a known issue that our industrious MCAT person, Mary, typically works on and behind the scenes, and she is out with an injury today. And so we do know that this is a problem with Bob Campbell's microphone, and we just haven't been resolving it the same way we do normally.
Okay, well, let's take extra time to make sure that folks online are able to hear other council comments or questions. And so to clarify, as Ms. Trimble is bringing this online, Councilor Jordan and Councilor Vasika, we're moving forward with Councilor Carlino's first amendment. And the first amendment is in relation to the 1% contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And again,
Do you mind if, Counselor Carlino, could you bring those back up on screen? It would be easier if you did it since you already just had them up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. So I have the first item that we're voting on is an amendment to the development agreement brought by Councilor Carlino, and we are using version B. If you saw his email that had both versions on it, and that is an amendment to development agreement 3.4B. The developer agrees to facilitate the collection of a 1% assessment, and then further on down it says with agreement from the city, has the option to move this to a local charitable or community organization of the city's choice within the city limits.
Great. Thank you for reading that out loud. Councilor Carlino, thanks for sharing that on screen.
Appreciate the teamwork. Are we ready for roll call vote?
We are.
All right. Beginning with Councilor Campbell.
No.
That was a no. Carlino.
Yes.
Farmer.
No.
Jones.
No.
Jordan.
Yes.
Nelson.
No.
Savage.
No.
Cheryl.
No.
Asika.
No.
Anderson.
No.
And Becerra.
No.
And that's 2 in favor, 9 opposed, so that amendment fails.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to the second amendment as shown on
All
screen.
right. Yeah, the next amendment is an amendment to the development agreement brought by Councilor Carlino to add a public use of the plaza clause to section 3.5. Beginning with Carlino.
Yes.
Farmer.
No.
Jones.
No.
Jordan.
Yes.
Nelson.
No.
Savage.
No.
Cheryl.
No.
Vasika.
No.
Anderson.
No.
Becerra.
No.
And Campbell.
No.
That's 2 in favor, 9 opposed. That amendment also fails.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next batch of agreements related to a different legal document. Okay. So we have 2 additional amendments being proposed by Councilor Carlino. And for clarification, these would impact the purchase and sale agreement. The original email from Councilor Carlino indicated that they would amend the development agreement, but City Attorney Sudbury clarified that with Councilor Carlino today, and with concurrence that this would amend our the purchase and sale agreement. So Councilor Carlino, if you'll go ahead and present your amendments, please.
Yeah. I guess first I'd say I don't think this property should be left vacant, and I'm totally open to the sale. I just think, we've been pretty desperate to make something happen here for a while, and sometimes when we're getting desperate, we don't make quite as good of the deal as we possibly could. So I'm just trying to help us get some more public benefits. And over the weekend, or since we first heard this last Wednesday, we've heard a lot of labor unions reach out to us and ask for a project labor agreement. So, in response to all these union organizers and that have reached out to us, I've just added a clause for that. I'll pop it up on the screen. So the first is the project labor agreement, basically saying that the developer shall agree to be a party and require the general contractor, all sub-tier contractors and other successors or assignee of this interest in the hotel to be a party to a community workforce agreement. And it goes on. And then the second amendment is the labor peace agreement. Basically for, years down the line when, this hotel's running and operating, if, just having a peace agreement in place for, fair negotiations and if people are working to organize unions there down the line. So they're both attached to the agenda. Happy to pull them up on the screen whenever that's helpful. And happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carlino, and other questions from other council members for Councillor Carlino? Councillor Cheryl, please.
I don't have a question for Mr. Cardlino, but I do have
Of course, and questions for anybody, you bet,
Okay,
certainly.
Just making sure. To me, this seems like something you would do by policy, not project by project. And also, there were documents referenced that didn't exist in this. So, but I guess my question is, could I ask, I know Grant Kier with the Missoula Economic Partnership is here, and could I call him up to ask him a question? Would you be willing?
You may. I assume that he'd be willing to come up and answer that question. Thanks
He's
for
here.
asking.
He knows when he's in chambers, he's going to be put on the spot. So, I mean, you were looking at the economic picture for our city and kind of the broader economic picture, not at this project specifically, although I know you're looking at this too. I'm just curious if coming in and making these kind of changes project by project toward the end, as we've negotiated everything, how you feel like that would play out kind of in a bigger sense for economic development in our city. It feels like it's moving the goalpost to some degree, and I just want to know what you think about that.
Thank you, Councillor. As Grant Kier, President and CEO of the Missoula Economic Partnership. As I think many of you know, but just for the record, we're under a contract with the Missoula Redevelopment Agency to help recruit entities and developers who are willing to come in and act as a partner to the city to redevelop sites that the city has a high priority for redevelopment. A large part of that practice is trying to communicate to developers here in Missoula, across the region and across the country, what our goals and objectives are for each and individual project. And what I can tell you with certainty, and I think you commented in your opening remarks, we rely on existing policy documents to present that case. And one of the biggest concerns of developers that come in to try to establish a public-private partnership is the confidence they have in the predictability of the process going forward. And we work for months and months with developers to provide them with the documentation that shows what the policy statements are of the public body, right down to the neighborhood plans and the existing community plans and strategic plans, so that it's really clear that there's established precedent for what's going on and what they can expect going forward. And then we invite them to be a partner in exploring how to achieve those goals in partnership with the city. I believe it would have a pretty strong chilling effect if the experience of a developer who had come in and worked for months and months, or years and years in this case, to develop a partnership, had new goals established at the 11th hour after an enormous, I don't know that most of you probably aren't developers, and I'm not a developer, but what I've come to learn and really appreciate is that there's an enormous amount of time, money, and energy that is invested in getting a project to the phase that it is right now. And to make those commitments based on financial models and assessments and plans, and then to have those disrupted at this phase in the process, is one that I think would have future developers questioning. And I don't, this is for-profit developers. I believe this is true of nonprofit developers, and whether they're developing hotels or the affordable housing that we all desperately do need to see developed. I think it would have an impact on them coming in here and feeling confident creating these partnerships if they feel like the goalposts move when you come into a city council meeting trying to move the project forward. Hope that answers the question.
That does answer my question. Thank you. May I have another question, not for you, Grant?
Yep, you bet. Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Kier. Go ahead, Counselor Cheryl.
Thank you. He does know if he comes in here, we're probably going to call him up on something like this. So thank you for your willingness. This question I think is for Ellen. I mean, have we done anything like this in a contract for, I guess I'm questioning whether there would be any way that a developer could anticipate that we would put something like this in, and also if there are local unions that you know of that would actually, would we be able to, would they even be able to hire locally if we did something like this? Could you just speak to those two things?
Well, the answer to your first question is no. We've never imposed something of this nature on a project that's receiving TIF funding. I think what makes this a little different is we're selling the property to them. In most cases, the developer already owns the property. That said, we have multiple other tracts of land, as you're well aware, that we've bought over the last several years that we're looking to, as Grant Kier pointed out, to attract developers, and they need that kind of certainty about what are the rules. And now, like Ryan, I've forgotten the second part of your question.
That was
availability of local. We've done a little bit of checking, and there is not a general contractor who is unionized in Missoula County, and in fact, apparently there's only one major GC in the state that is a union shop. So if there were a requirement that the general contractor has to be a union shop, then I think you're pushing the work out of Missoula and maybe out of the state of Montana to achieve that. So a lot of your subs are plumbers, electricians, etc. But not every discipline or every subcontractor is going to be running a union, will have a union shop. So, and I would point out that in at least the portions of the project that are being funded with public funds, with TIF funds, state prevailing wages have to be paid. I mean, it doesn't have to be union workers, but state prevailing wages are paid on all of our infrastructure investments.
Thank you. So we would be pushing the work outside of Missoula potentially. And I was going to ask about the state prevailing wage. So thank you. That's all the questions I have.
All right, you bet. Counselor Jones. Did you have a question regarding the amendments? Oh, I'm sorry. Counselor Campbell.
Yeah.
Sorry, goofy. Counselor Campbell, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I have a few questions for the sponsor. What other examples are there in Montana of a government entity compelling employers to enter labor peace agreements within the state?
I don't have any other examples off the top of my head right now, but I'm sure it could be done. And I think a lot of the people that are going to be working at this hotel or working on this hotel are the same people in our town that need affordable housing and what could benefit from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So I just think anything we can do to help ensure that the workers of this hotel are going to have prevailing wages and good benefits. I think is a positive thing, but I cannot give you a specific example.
Okay.
Again, I'm running the meeting until she
Yes,
gets back.
ma'am.
You may have
Madam President, in the absence of the mayor, if I could ask
Of
further.
course. Go ahead.
So these next sets of questions, I'm referring back to something I sent by email to my colleagues this afternoon. It's a report on labor peace agreements. It was conducted by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in 2016. So my questions would be based on that document, information obtained therein. And I also sent that to the city clerk's office to be attached to the minutes. I don't know, I need to make a motion for that, but I'd like it attached to the minutes.
Yeah, that's fine. It can be attached.
So as part of any labor peace agreement, that would necessitate a collective bargaining agreement be established with the employer, is that correct?
Yeah, that's how it typically works, sure.
And part of that, as part of labor peace agreements, as stipulated within the document I mentioned, would mandate the employer be compelled to provide names, addresses, and phone numbers of employees or prospective employees to any such labor unions. Is that correct?
This, well, I think that's outside of the scope of this amendment. This amendment's not requiring like unions. We wouldn't be able to do that, but it's adding a project labor agreement. So, I mean, but yeah, I think that's probably how that would work if there was a union effort at this hotel at a later time.
Through the collective bargaining agreement. The city wouldn't compel the employer, but through the collective bargaining agreement, an employer could be compelled to provide names, addresses, phone numbers, and such.
You know, I'm not able to answer that question. I don't know if somebody else from the audience could or.
Okay, well, I'm asking, the questions are for the sponsor. Okay, we'll move on. By compelling an employer to sign a LPA, are we compelling the employer to accept offers they can't refuse or fulfill? By that I mean, if we're going to compel an employer to conduct a LPA and thus a collective bargaining agreement, are we setting it up to where the employer is basically left to take any potential labor union's offer and accept it in order to go forward with the construction of a development and operation of a development?
No.
Okay. As part of a LPA, if I may ask another.
Please.
Thank you. As part of labor peace agreements, according to that study from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, it's normally status quo when LPA is in place that employers, rather than hiring workers, staff based on merit, based on the best fit for a position, that through an LPA instead would be the labor unions that would provide to the employer whether they feel they're the best fit or not, a particular employee, a particular staff person, regardless of the wishes of the employer. Is that correct?
No.
Okay. I think that's all the comments I have at this point, but I have comments on this that I'll bring up later before we take a vote.
All right, you got it. Thanks for your questions, Counselor Campbell. Now, Counselor Jones.
Thanks. This is for, I think for Ellen and Dale, because I think the three of us were with the city back in 2016, 2017, when we had another go around on the Riverfront Triangle and trying to pull that project together. And I think Gabriel's were part of it back then. It certainly isn't a desperate measure. This has been years and years of working on this project. But there were some project labor agreement and labor peace agreements. I remember being in chambers, there was some public comment and discussion on some of those items then. I don't think it ever got any traction, and the project was very different. But could either of you just paint that picture? I think we never even got that project off the ground, but the labor components were never voted on and part of those agreements. So I just want to make sure that we have a clear history on this.
That's correct. There were discussions in that iteration of this project around basically the Second Amendment, not the project labor agreement, but the peace agreement. It was called the Community Benefits Agreement, I think.
Right.
That never was approved by any entity of the city that I'm aware of, and then subsequently the project failed for very different reasons. Interestingly, once that project became morphed into Drift, which was the performance venue and the hotel, there was no request for such an agreement. So
Thanks, that helped. I just want to make sure that we're clear that there was not a precedent ever set, that this is something that should have been a component. And then also the RFP that had gone out much further back never referenced this type of component, did it?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks for your questions. And Councillor Anderson?
Thanks so much, Madam Mayor. My question is most likely they're going to be for Dale or the City Attorney, Ryan Sudbury. So whoever wants to jump up and answer. But if we were building this project, if it, obviously we're not in the hotel business, but if we were building a project of this magnitude or this scale, would we be required to adhere to these particular agreements that we're proposing to add on to this agreement?
So the answer is no. We wouldn't be allowed to include a provision like this in an agreement with a general construction contractor or anybody that we brought on to do a public works project. In 1999, the state law changed with respect to project labor agreements, and there's a general prohibition on those agreements being included in construction projects for government facilities, public works projects under 18.2.425 of the state code. So we couldn't include this if we were building a building, or if it was strictly a city project, this would be a prohibited provision. We couldn't require a labor peace agreement or a project labor agreement as part of any of those construction contracts.
Great, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Can I have a question? May I?
Sure.
It's like a phone a friend. Can I ask someone from the audience to come up? Would Mr. Hitt from the Central Labor Council be willing to come up and answer a couple questions? I saw you sort of self-select in regards to some of the questions in regards to the questions that my ward mate, Mr. Campbell, was bringing up in regards to, it has an acronym that I'm escaping on, but you know where I was. If you'd like to answer some of those questions, we'd appreciate it. God, I need more caffeine. Thank you.
You're good. Derek Hitt. I'm the current president of the Missoula Central Labor Council and the business rep for the Teamsters Local 2 and a resident of Missoula. So from the top, there are 3 general contractors that I can think of in the area right now that are union. So you got Slutton, you got Prospect, and you also got McKinstry that has opened up a shop over here. They are kind of more of a technical one, but also you could probably get any of our general contractors out of Butte that would come up and do it. So yes, there are local ones. And then also with the project labor agreement, no, we're not asking you to open up the books and let us know everybody's name, birth, date, sexual orientation, all the other stuff, which way, the left hand, right hand, that kind of stuff. No, on a project labor agreement, we are just asking you to let us compete. If we're the best, if our contractors are the best fitted for it, then let them compete for it. If there's a non-union one that is better for it, well, let them have it. We want to make sure that local hire is the priority. We want to be able to have people from Missoula that are in our apprenticeship or journeyman to be able to be looking over at this Frogs Triangle project and be like, I built that. I'm proud of it. That's what we're wanting. I know the project labor agreement was kind of cooked real quick here and should have been something that was done earlier on. I just became aware of it that this happened. So I'm just here to kind of do a little bit how we call cleanup. So I can answer more questions if there are, but hopefully they answer some of yours.
Yeah, that's all I have. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hitt, and thank you, Councillor Anderson. And questions, Councillor Jordan?
Thank you. Stacy kind of beat me to it. I knew that Derek Hitt was in the audience and I wanted to get his perspective on the peace agreement and the labor agreement. And it sounds like we are pro-labor, but that perhaps the labor peace agreement isn't something that is legal. Is that what I'm hearing? And again, I'm still having trouble with audio on my end, so I am missing bits and pieces and trying to read it as it goes across the screen, but it's also not working great for me. So I guess I just want to hear from Mr. Hitt, his perspective about the difference between the peace agreement and a labor agreement from a union rep perspective.
Okay. Thank you for your question, Counselor Jordan. Mr. Hitt's on his way up to the microphone now.
Back again for a second time. So a PLA is kind of more of a traditional thing that a lot of our building trades would be more interested in. Like you said, under about 80s, I was probably just born about then, is when they became illegal. So a lot of the times what we do here in Montana is we drop the L and just call it a PA. So a project agreement, where we just work with the contractor for a one-time thing. It's kind of like dating, seeing if it works, seeing if it doesn't. Have a nice day. Yes, I like to dumb it down just so everybody gets a giggle. But the labor peace agreement is something that's a little new, and from what I was reading, doesn't quite jive with a lot of labor practices, and I just don't see it being something that is fulfillable, and also kind of limits the interaction, if there's any, with a union that is established with this, if there's a union established with the hotel, because you can't basically. What if a person says, hey, are you having a nice day to me? I can't respond to them if they work there. It's just a little funky. It's half-cooked at best. No offense. I think it needed a little bit more research and maybe reaching out to some of our unions, and we could have given you better guidance and better language for that. So.
Thank you, Mr. Hitt. Counselor Jordan, could you hear Mr. Hitt's responses?
I could. Thank you very much.
All right, you bet. Thank you, Mr. Hitt. Thank you for your questions, Counselor Jordan. Do we have any other council questions on these amendments? Okay, not seeing any additional council questions on the amendments. We now will go to public comment on the amendments. Start with folks in the room. So again, this is 2 amendments, and this would amend the purchase and sale agreement. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. If you'll say your first and last name for the record, please. Go right ahead.
Good evening, Don Halverson, business manager for the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters local here in town, also the president of the Western Montana Building Construction Trades Council. The main purpose of talking about and getting a discussion going about PLAs is for exactly that, to have discussions with developers, our contractors. We're a pool of contractors and employees that can be provided for these projects, can get contacts for local contractors, for local employees, for these projects. If you take a little bit of time driving around town, looking at some of the projects that are going on now, and especially some of these residential type projects, take a drive on the site. You guys have the right to do that. Take a look at the license plates that you see on the vehicles that are on these projects. You're going to get Texas, you're going to get Wyoming, you're going to get Utah. One of the main reasons for that is the wages that they can get those people to come up here and work on these projects for. All we're trying to do by at least getting to sit down with the developers is to give our contractors and give our members a chance. That's really all we're after, to have a serious conversation on what we have going on here, what we see, what the needs we see for our members, what they need in their lives. So that's really all that we're asking through this process.
Thank you, Mr. Halverson. Other members of the public wishing to speak on these amendments, please.
Hi, I'm Savannah Geary. I have mixed feelings about this deal in general with regards to housing and how it affects the average Missoulian. And I understand that going through with it is the pragmatic decision today. Councilor Carlino's amendments seem like a way to protect working class Missoulians with regard to this deal. And so I just urge you to think about who you're building the project for. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gary. Thanks for your comments. Other members of the public, come on up.
Hello, Mark Anderlich, Anderlik. I live in Ward 6.
All of you had received an email today with quite a bit of information, and I hope you looked at it. And I'm just going to speak to the labor peace agreement because brothers here spoke very well about the other agreement. And I'm going to say this, that a labor peace agreement is actually in law in 11 states in the United States. It is in countless hotel projects, and also probably about 24 airport projects around the country. This is not something that's new. This is not something that's, marginal, all right? And speaking to Councilor Campbell here, the city cannot mandate any kind of union activity or any union membership. We have to recognize that the National Labor Relations Act, which governs most workers in trying to organize, is broken. There's a reason why 2/3 of workers in this country want to have a union and only 10% have it, okay? There's a reason for that. And we brought this up several years ago with the original Hotel Fox project, and talked about it for quite a long time. The use of this labor peace agreement has only expanded. And what it means is that any sort of labor organization that wants to organize the workers in the hotel and the hotel operators agree not to fight, okay? And while organizing is going on. And this only limits for 3 years. So if you've read the, draft agreement, it only lasts for 3 years. Then have at it. This is a way of giving workers who work in the hotel, who we know at the Doubletree Hotel that workers there are not making a living wage, and they will be subject to more than 30% of their housing costs. They will be housing distressed at low wage jobs, like what the hotel would likely provide, okay? So if you want to protect your interest, your financial interest in both TIF, okay, which is a public subsidy, and you're looking to get that back, and also the donations to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, okay? This would be a way of ensuring that you would not see that disrupted through one aspect of force majeure, if you understand what that is, and that is labor difficulties, right? This would help ensure that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Anderlich. Other members of the public wishing to make comment on these amendments tonight?
My name is Kevin Hutt. I live in Ward 1. And going through the development agreement, I realize we're not talking about the development agreement now, but what we are talking about directly relates to the development agreement for this reason. 3.5D in the development agreement provides that the developer will control, operate, and maintain the public plaza per an operating agreement, and that operating agreement is to be concluded once the purchase is closed and before a certificate of occupancy is issued. Accordingly, the place to have this clause is exactly where it's proposed to be, which is in the purchase agreement. And again, as Mr. Anderlich was just pointing out, this is for the protection of your financial interests. You can't do something just for a political reason, put a clause in like this, but it is legal. The Ninth Circuit ruled on this. I think that case has been provided to you with the materials that you got earlier. And the Ninth Circuit upheld a clause like this because it was an agreement between two private entities. It's not an agreement between the city and anybody. With respect to, much respect to Councilor Campbell, I think we all admire and appreciate what the individual chambers of commerce do for every community. But that's a little different from the United States Chamber of Commerce, which is an extreme right-wing organization, is extremely anti-labor. And I don't think that asking questions that come from talking points from an organization like that when they are completely irrelevant to the terms of what's being proposed here is very helpful. Secondly, although the purpose of this would be to protect your interests, because if force majeure, if it occurred, it relieves the developer from obligations. That's in section 35D of the development agreement. You don't want to relieve have the developer relieved of its obligations to operate and maintain and control this public plaza in the event there's a strike. And why would there be a strike? There would be a strike because if this goes like other hotels, actually any hotel and motel in Missoula, no one's going to be paying a living wage, which is for someone with no children, a single person, $21.67 an hour. Now, why would you want to subsidize an affordable housing fund by exploiting workers and not paying them a living wage? That makes absolutely no sense. It's completely asinine. And I would ask that you look at the facts here and not listen to propaganda points that come from a national extreme right-wing organization.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Mr. Hunt. Other members of the public wishing to make comment on these amendments this evening?
Lucas Moody, Ward 1, and proud union member. I think both these amendments protect the local labor force, and part of the necessity in order to get affordable housing is having having living wages in Missoula, and that it's just exacerbates the problem of housing inaffordability if we are outsourcing labor costs to because we can find cheaper laborers from out of state rather than forcing them to compete on equal terms, where as the labor agreement would require that not that it gives favorability to unions, but that it gives the opportunity for locals to compete, because the wages they have to other agencies have to have competitive rates to the local standard. Similarly, with the labor peace agreement, just to reiterate that that would keep labor disputes since, as mentioned, part of the remuneration to the city is the 1% donation, but that seems to be tied to sales of foods and the like. And so during the strike, that remuneration would not be received by the city, and thus this would be also the city protecting its investment. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Moody. Other public comments on these amendments this evening?
As you can tell, I'm vertically challenged, so I got to move the mic down. Derek Hitt, Ward 2, Missoula resident, representative of Teamsters Local 22, and the president of the Central Labor Council. So there's probably 30 minutes or 30 seconds of my time already eaten up. With that being said, like I said, a lot of our local organized unions here just want to have a fair shake at bidding this work. We have local people that are in apprenticeships, that are journeymen, that are master craftsmen of their trades. And we just want that way they can have some pride in some jobs that they've done. A lot of them have to travel now out of the area to work. And with this large opportunity to work in town, I just like to see that we get a fair shake at it and show everybody what our skilled, trained workforce can do. And that's all we're asking. We're not here to impose everybody opening up their books, letting us see everybody who's who. We don't need to do that. We just want to here to give our trades a good shake at this. That's all we're asking.
Thank you, Mr. Hitt. Next public comment, come on up.
Again, Grant Kier, President and CEO of the Missoula Economic Partnership. Just hearing the spirit of the intention of the amendments and certainly listening to some of the folks from the labor community talking about this, I would just say we certainly share the goals, mission, and vision of trying to ensure that this is an affordable community where people are making wages that allow them to live in our community, and where the people who are doing the work take incredible pride in seeing the fruits of their labor as legacies to their efforts in our community. So I'll probably deeply regret this, but what I might propose as part of the work that we do with the city going forward, if this amendment doesn't pass, and I guess what I'd say is that I'm here to speak in opposition of this amendment at this time, because I don't think it is a fair moment in this process to introduce this level of requirement. But I would certainly be willing to work with the mayor's office and MRA to look at, as we move forward, what can we do with our processes of introducing developers to projects in the community to also ensure that they have opportunities for our organized labor groups to be at the table to talk about what it looks like to get in front of these developers and propose their work and skill sets, so that that's part of the conversation that takes place in the vetting process and does not feel like a requirement that comes in at the 11th hour. So the invitation's there, and we'd love to explore how we can make that happen in the future. But again, on this particular amendment for this project, we are opposed. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments and your offer, Mr. Kier. Any other members of the public wishing to speak on these amendments this evening? I'm not seeing any in the audience. Go online here to see if we've got folks online, and I think I see a hand raised here. So I'm just gonna scroll down here. Yes, Ryan Brewer. Please unmute yourself and provide your comment, please.
There we go. I'm sorry. I'd just like to speak in opposition to both of these amendments. I think just from a practical perspective, having done several small commercial construction projects all over the state, right now it's super hard to build anything. Building materials are more expensive. Project financing is more expensive. Permitting is more expensive. Architects, engineers, everything is more expensive. There are so many hurdles to getting a project out of the ground, even if it's small. Something of this size requiring the technical expertise of a general and all of the subs involved is really, really hard. And I don't think introducing additional barriers or requirements to the developer at this point aids in the process and actually makes it more likely that they will be unsuccessful in the project, which I think we've all agreed is exactly what we want to do. And I guess the second point I would make is, philosophically, beyond the realistic part of it, philosophically, I agree with the idea of union labor and union construction, but I don't think it is the role of government to mandate the use of that in this circumstance. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Brewer. Anybody else online wishing to make public comment on these amendments? I'm not seeing any hands raised. So that wraps up our public comment on these amendments. We'll bring it back to council comments. And I see Councilor Carlino with your hand raised.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks everybody for the comments. I definitely think we should take MEP up on the offer, and I appreciate you all bringing that up. And I'm also happy to work with anybody to rewrite these if there's better language that we could all agree on to get to a good compromise. But overall, I do think these projects should, include a project labor agreement and labor peace agreement. I think we need to stand up for workers in Missoula as much as we can, and we do have an opportunity with things like this where we're selling off the property. So I'm happy to help rewrite it and rework it with people, but I think a lot of the people that are going to be working on this project and then working at the hotel later on are going to be the same people that are struggling to survive and live in our community and find access to affordable housing with the kind of wages that are offered at things like this. And, I think We've got a lot of representation on council for, developers and for doing projects like this. And I think we need more representation for workers and for people who are trying to make a living wage here. So anything we can do to help with that, I think is a positive step forward.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Carlino. Councillor Campbell.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to be non-support of these amendments today. I think something's been said, from a positive perspective, as much as MEP could, facilitate any further discussion on project agreements. I mean, that's wonderful. I too feel this is a topic that, might have been addressed earlier in the negotiations as they've unraveled over the past year or unfolded. To see, what could be done in that regard. But, I'm going to be against this today because I don't feel it's government's role to compel an employer in this case to to mandate labor agreements from one party to another. In the case of labor peace agreements, all the research has shown, the information I presented shows that labor peace agreements do compel employers to live with the employees that are selected by the unions for their business. They do not have a hand in selection. They do not have a hand. It's not up to them to say who the best employee is. Your union's going to tell you who you're going to hire and who the best employee is. I also have an issue with a labor peace agreement dispersing private information of not only employees within a business, but prospective employees, anyone that would apply for employment in business. And I can't help but think of, the state of Montana and the state constitution, right to privacy, and, the issue coming up. And, I could certainly see in the Montana legislature, future sessions, just having a field day with this. And, we mentioned states that, have this in place, but there's also a number of states that have labor peace agreement preemptions that prohibit this across the board. And, we have a way in Missoula of getting the legislature to do, many a thing that, just for the sake of, sticking it to the city of Missoula on, one issue or another. And I don't think we need to go down a path of giving another reason to enact another piece of legislation to, stick it to folks in Missoula here when we're trying to get a good thing accomplished here. I think this is going to be a great project for the city, but, going down this path and, as the sponsor just said too, this would necessitate a collective bargaining agreement. And there's been testimony about the fact that, well, this is going to prevent work stoppages. This is going to prevent striking. But if you have to start with a baseline of a collective bargaining agreement, you can't come to an agreement, no work's being done. You're not going to get any construction done. You're not going to hire employees. It's just going to continue to be a hole in the ground until that's implemented. So it's not the city mandating it, but when we tell, two other parties that they have to come to this agreement and there's no agreement or no consideration or no arrangement that both parties agree to, then there is a stoppage of work and, nothing's going to proceed. And I think it unfairly benefits one party over the other. So, I encourage my colleagues to look at the document I presented. I think it's fair. I think it's balanced. And, for those reasons, I will not be in support of these amendments today.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Campbell and Councillor Savage.
Thank you. I also just wanted to say a specific thank you to Mr. Hitt and Mr. Kier for being audience members and being called upon, maybe unexpectedly. I really appreciate what Mr. Kier said about working on a process with the city and coming forward, after we sort of move forward with this project or not. But I think that I love that idea. I love having organized labor at the table. I also really do always appreciate your perspective, Mr. Hitt, and I really appreciate you being here and being willing to speak to us. I'm not going to be in support of these amendments, though I do support unions and I do support organized labor. I think that this
at the 11th hour, asking a developer to consider something this significant isn't particularly fair in the process. But I do appreciate bringing it forward. I think that the consideration of having these conversations is really important, and having them on the table is really important. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And Councillor Jordan.
Thank you. A couple things. I think that I think a couple issues are getting conflated. This is city property that we're selling to a private developer. And so it's absolutely within our right and our duty to make sure that the buy-sell is what we need it to be. This is not two private entities engaging in a deal where the city is overstepping. This is city-owned property where we actually can right to our own needs. And so when people call in and say, or one of my colleagues saying that government shouldn't be involved, this is a very different situation. I also think that it's hard to be anti-collective bargaining agreement when you benefit from being a part of one. While I will be in support of the labor agreement, I won't be in support of the peace agreement. I just need to follow what I'm hearing from union folks. But I think that we need to be really careful when we talk about how great unions are in one perspective, but that we don't want to make sure that they are supported in another, and to also really remember, this is city property. And so the city can put extra conditions on the buy-sell if the buyer agrees to it. So this is very, very different than government overreach. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Jordan and Councillor Anderson.
Thanks so much. I agree with Councillor Jordan in regards to this is city property and we have the ability to, put certain conditions on it. I do, however, think it's unfair that we put conditions on a project that exceed the conditions that we at the city operate under. So I appreciate the conversation and look forward to that. Really appreciate Mr. Hitt coming down and talking and educating us. And, I grew up in a union household. I am definitely pro-union, and I don't feel like my vote against these amendments in any way, shape, or form is contradictory to that. I think that we also want the labor unions to have a seat at the table and having a conversation and figuring out a process is the way to do it. It is not sitting here at the 11th hour when, as the representative from the Central Labor Council said, wasn't even consulted about some of these amendments. That's troubling to me, and so that's where I don't feel comfortable moving forward with these. So I will not be in support, but I don't feel like I'm going to be in any way, shape, or form contradicting or lessening my support for labor unions. I mean, here in Missoula, we have 13 of them. The two biggest ones are the police and the fire department, and they know that I am their biggest advocate. So I appreciate the conversation to come, but I'm not comfortable with moving these amendments at this time.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Appreciate your comments. And I do believe that is 16 different unions here at the city of Missoula. Let's see, Councillor Becerra.
Thank you. I think my comments align with my colleagues too, in that I think that this city council and this community has shown commitment to keeping conversations with our local union representatives. An example of that was during our apprenticeship program, trying to work and collaborate on this important issue of benefit to our community. I will not be supporting the amendments because I do think that it needs to be part of a broader policy where we do have our local representatives as part of the conversation. I think that's an integral part of any policy that we can put in place that can be sustainable in the city of Missoula, and those who need to be at the table need to be at the table. So happy to continue to be an advocate and happy to continue to have those conversations with our local representatives. But I don't think that this is the place to start making policy. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Becerra. Any other council comments on the amendments? Okay. I'm not seeing any additional council comments on the amendments. And so with that, we have had public comment on them, we've had council comments, and so we can do a roll call on the amendments. And just as we did prior, Councilor Carlino, would you share your screen? That would be great. That way we can easily follow along with the audience. Does that work for you, Ms. Trimble?
It does.
Great. And we'll do a roll call vote on each of the amendments separately, please.
Absolutely. Beginning with an amendment to the purchase and sale agreement brought by Councilor Carlino, labeled Community Workforce Agreement or Project Labor Agreement. Beginning with Farmer.
No.
Jones?
No.
Jordan?
Yes.
Melson?
No.
Could you repeat that?
No.
Thank you. Savage?
No.
Cheryl?
No.
Masika?
No.
Anderson?
No.
Becerra?
No.
Campbell?
No.
And Carlino?
Yes.
So on the Community Workforce Agreement, we had 2 in favor, 9 opposed, and that amendment fails.
Okay.
Next up, we have an amendment to the Purchase and Sale Agreement brought by Councilor Carlino on the Labor Peace Agreement requirement. And he has that up. And we're going to begin with Councilor Jones.
No.
Jordan?
No.
Melson?
No.
Savage?
No.
Cheryl?
No.
Masika? Masika?
No.
Thank you. Anderson?
No.
Becerra?
No.
Campbell?
No.
Carlino?
Yes.
And Farmer?
No.
That amendment had 1 in favor, 10 opposed. That amendment fails.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for the robust conversation. That concludes the amendments that have been offered on the motions. I also want to thank members of the community for coming in and being part of the conversation. Again, Mr. Kier, thank you for the opportunity to continue conversations as we work with local labor leaders and how we can ensure there is opportunity for local labor to be part of our projects. And so with that, then we come back to the main motions. And so let me just get a quick check on where we are with our process here. So we're in regular business. We've heard questions from council on the regular motions. We've heard our amendments. Our main motions are on the floor. And so I do believe we come back to council comment on those main motions, public comment, excuse me, and then we'll come back to council comment. So we have, again, an opportunity for public comment on the main motions. Those main motions did not get amended. So these main motions are the ones that are articulated on the agenda, and are the ones that Councilor Jones read on the floor. Any public comment in regards to the motions on the floor?
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Zeb Harrington. I'm the president of Kettle House Brewing Company here in town. And speaking on in support of the Riverfront Triangle project, hopefully providing a little bit different perspective. Kettle House has about 40 employees, most of whom live in Missoula. These are good jobs. These folks are building homes here, buying homes here, raising families here. a large part of what supports our business is businesses like Averill Hospitalities. We sell 90% of our beer through distributors that go to end users such as Averill Hospitality. They've been longtime supporters of our business and a lot of local businesses, a lot of craft beer throughout the state. So this is a project that would really help support us. I think it'll boost up other Missoula businesses in the area, the downtown for sure, but beyond. It's going to bring people into town, economic opportunity, and that riverfront triangle property represents a lot of opportunity. I was born and raised in Missoula, lived here my whole life, have kind of watched it fall into a state of disrepair. It's some of the nicest real estate we have in town. We have an incredible resource in the Clark Fork River flowing through Missoula, and I feel that it's underutilized right now. One of my coworkers likes to joke that, the nicest riverfront, or the second nicest riverfront dining we had in Missoula for a long time was Taco John's. And I don't have anything against Taco John's, it's great. We don't even have that anymore. And you see how people flock to Finn, what a resource that is for the community. People love to be in that riverfront space. And we see it at our property out in Bonner too. We have a tap room on the Blackfoot River and people love to be out along that river. This is where people want to be. I think we can replicate what some other cities have done, building a really vibrant riverfront space. And I think the Averills are the right people to do the project. They have a proven history of success, longtime Montana business owners. I think they can build something very vibrant there that will be a tremendous benefit, not only to Missoulians, but to tourists and anybody coming through town. So I'm very much in support of the project, and thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Arrington. All right, other members of the public wishing to make comment? Not seeing any in the room here. Are there any members of the public online? Yes, Kaya Peterson, please unmute yourself and we'll be here for your comment. That working for you? Just give you a second there to unmute, Ms. Peterson.
Thank you. I'm talking away here. I had one unmuted and one not. Sorry about that. Hi, everyone. Madam Mayor, City Council members. This is Kaya Peterson. I'm the Executive Director of NeighborWorks Montana, here in support of the sale and the development proposal as proposed for the Riverfront Triangle. It's a great opportunity, wonderful public benefit, and in particular, I wanted to speak in support of the Housing Trust Fund element of this proposal. I think funds going in up front and over time is a really creative and thoughtful solution to putting this land to use. We know how difficult it's been to fund the Housing Trust Fund. We also know how important that fund is to accomplishing a variety of housing goals in the community. So again, just want to express my support and thanks for the thoughtful proposal, and I'm looking forward to seeing this project come to fruition.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Peterson. Thanks for joining us this evening. And Ryan Brewer.
There we go. I promise this is the last time you'll hear from me tonight. But I would just like to speak in support of the project. You know, I remember the Fox when I was a little kid and going to the matinees there, and it's a sad thing that it's gone, but it's also sad that it's taken us this long to get there with a real project. And so it's exciting to have it. As I was driving down Higgins this morning, I noticed some people walking down the street, you know, kind of dressed professionally, and they had those tags on that you wear when you're attending a conference. And there were 2 or 3 separate groups, and one was going into a coffee shop, and another group was going into another coffee shop. And clearly, they were on a break, and from somewhere else, very likely. And they're here to spend money in our community. And I think this conference facility and this hotel is going to bring additional revenue into downtown Missoula, specifically into an area of downtown Missoula that really needs it. So I think it's the right project. It's the right time. and I encourage everyone to vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Brewer. Are there other members of the public online that wish to comment on this project, on these motions? Okay, I'm not seeing any. That wraps up our public comment. We bring it back to council comment. So council members, Councillor Jones.
Thanks. So I've got some comments on the three main motions that are in front of us. This has been a dormant asset in Missoula for 40 years. And this is the best opportunity that we've had to date, I think, to get something impactful, something beautiful, something significant built there. There have been a lot of different developers that have taken a run at this over the years, and the city has put a lot of requirements or asks on this over the years. And I think the one that sticks in my mind, it was going to be a performing arts center years ago. So there's people have tossed around a lot of great ideas, knowing that this is a very special piece of property and that we want it to be special for Missoula. But I think we've also gotten in our way sometimes, because 40 years is a long time to have a special piece of property not develop. So I think we've finally got a solid, aspirational, yet also grounded in reality project that I'm thrilled about. I think as a council, we need to think about making amendments at the very end stage. Sends a strong signal to the community when there's an RFP that goes out, and that spurs years and years of talks, and ultimately a project gets this far. I think it really is a disservice to the community and to all of the entities involved in it to try and get as much as we can at the very end. That's just not the dynamic that I think is productive in this environment. Nothing gets built anymore without good partnerships, and those good partnerships have to be based on trust and respect. And I think staff have worked very hard with these developers for years to get to this point. So it's not that we don't have a hand in this. Councils for years have had a hand in this, and that there have been several RFPs. There has been a lot of council input over the years, and at this point, when it is tied up with a bow and comes to us, I think that's the way we need to look at it. So I just want to put that out there in terms of how do we function as a partner with our private sector in a way that will foster more productivity in this community. And I think back on the fact that the Riverfront Triangle was donated to the city. The Payne Block was donated to the city. MRL Park was sold, that entire chunk of land was sold at a deep discount to the city. We want to be the city that is the recipient of that kind of community largesse. And that means being clear, being predictable, being reliable. Doesn't mean we can't be creative. It just means that we have to go about it the right way. And finally, I just want to focus on the community benefits that are going to be coming from this project. $7 million into our Affordable Housing Trust Fund over the next 10 years is a game changer. That we have had the Affordable Housing Trust Fund in existence since 2020, and other than ARPA dollars, it really hasn't had that much go into it. So this is significant. This will be a huge impact in Missoula. It's going to take a while, but I'm thrilled about that. Other public benefit, getting those public trails on the river built out, the public plaza, better bike and pedestrian connectivity, convention center meeting space to be a huge business driver, and then frankly, just the activation of that west anchor of our downtown this is great for Missoula. So I'm thrilled about it. I'm happy to support this, and I hope to see something come up out of the ground sooner than later.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Jones. Councillor Sherrill.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for those comments, Ms. Jones. this is my 6th year on council, and there's not been an opportunity in that time to make a really meaningful contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and this is that opportunity. I think everybody, every person on this body understands what a game changer this type of funding would be for housing in our community. So starting there is me, why I'm supporting this. I've also lived in Missoula for 25 years. I've looked at an empty parking lot on the edge of our downtown for that entire time. Before I was on council, just wondered why in the world nothing was happening there, and I understand that better now. You know, there have been ideas and there have been designs, but we've never had a purchase agreement brought forward and sitting in front of us. It sat empty under city ownership with no taxes being collected. This is our opportunity tonight to change that. The sale of this property, along with the 1% donation to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, is great. But the other win is that once it's developed, the taxes from that property will fund other public benefit projects. Maybe a pedestrian bridge, maybe a park, maybe infrastructure that we need. Rough estimates were that when it's built out, it would be over $800,000 a year in additional taxes. Lastly, the development of this property will spur more economic growth in the area, again, creating taxes, jobs, and more public benefit opportunities. We have a downtown master plan that is our guiding document for this area. It had robust public input and was adopted by this council. It gives direction to staff and to MRA. This project is completely aligned with the vision for this area. And honestly, this just feels like a no-brainer for me. I'm happy that it may really be happening, and that it's going to be happening, that I get to vote on it, and that it will be happening during my time on council. And I feel lucky to have a Montana-based partner in this, and that wants to do this and has proven to be a good partner in the community and a good partner with the city. So thank you, and I really encourage my colleagues to vote for this as well. This is an opportunity for all of us, and it's a very big thing for our community.
Thank you for your comments, President Cheryl. And Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Shooting from the hip here a little bit of my comments. I don't have anything prepared, but I'm enthusiastically in support of this agreement. I think, as some of my colleagues have already said, it's been a long time coming for this piece of property. I could vaguely remember a mustard seed restaurant over there somewhere for a short period of time. But it's been vacant a long, long time, and we've made efforts there in the past to get some developed, and just never seemed to pan out. But I appreciate the efforts of groups like MEP, the mayor's office, Missoula Redevelopment Agency, in working diligently with Averill Properties to make this happen. I think it will not only be a boon to the city of Missoula and to folks that'll work here, folks involved in construction, but secondarily, I have an effect on other businesses. Retail, I have a compounding effect on restaurants, on breweries, on tourism, and it's going to be a economic multiplier once the door is open, and you guys are hopefully sooner rather than later open for business. I'm satisfied personally. A lot of my questions had to do with, taxpayer money and tax increment, and, whether or not, we're making wise decisions and there are adequate safeguards in place. I believe, one, that there are adequate safeguards in place going forward with this development agreement. My concerns have been allayed in terms of exposure to the city further on down the line. should something happen. But moreover, I think it's a good use of any tax increment that needs to be used for this project. As I think most of my colleagues are aware, I'm, very scrutinizing of use of tax increment here in Missoula. But I think, I've always said that, it should be used to further economic development. It should be used to facilitate improvements to infrastructure that could allow projects like this to pencil out, so to speak, so they can take place. And I feel like I could finally say that, word's going to get out there that, yes, indeed, Missoula is open for business. We welcome economic development. I don't know that I've said that in the past, but that going forward, this place where, prosperity can happen, economic development can happen, businesses could feel welcoming in the environment of local government here and the partners, be it MEP, Chamber of Commerce here in town, and to see, further development taking place. Hopefully this starts that effect of furthering development of the rest of the Triangle area to the west along Broadway and between Broadway and Front Street. But for here and now, for this particular development agreement, I'll most definitely be in support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, thank you. I would actually genuinely like to thank the developers for the perks that they threw into this contract that they didn't have to, including the 1% donation and doing the public infrastructure that I know people who may not go to your development will still use. And I also want to thank you for sitting through our conversations related to the amendments that we wanted to bring forward. We bring these forward not to be to cause problems, but because people have asked us to bring them forward. And as representatives, it's our job to bring these things forward. And we did that because we care about Missoula, and it's not that you don't, it's that we want to bring certain things forward that represent the folks in the community. So I also want to thank you for sitting through all the conversations related to our amendments. It's really clear that we do care about unions and local contractors. And I think going forward, we need to make sure that we have some sort of language to start touching on these ideas that Missoulians have brought to us that they want to see go into buy-sell agreements where the city owns the property. I think that calling these 11th hour changes isn't necessarily accurate, because that's what amendments are for. That's what this legislative process is about. It's about making sure that we have the best deal on the table that we can going forward that considers all the voices, including the folks who don't sit at the horseshoe. So I think, I just want to really put a pin in it that I don't want this to seem like a surprise the next time we potentially ask for it, because I think it'd be great if we started working on language to incorporate those into our projects now, or contracts now. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Jordan. And Councillor Anderson.
Thanks so much. Everyone here knows I was born and raised in the Flathead, and I actually spent my wedding night at the Whitefish Lake Lodge. Now, that marriage may not have ended well, but I have subsequently been going to the Whitefish Lake Lodge for 20 plus years. And it's interesting because you'll see people who have been there year after year after year as employees. And I think that speaks to a good working environment, because there are plenty of opportunities in the hospitality industry in Whitefish. And the fact that, I would see the same server year after year going there, I think speaks to it. And I am, the day I was elected, I got a text message saying, come to council the next day. We have this exciting project to announce. And it was Riverfront Triangle. And it's still an empty parking lot at the moment. So I'm really hoping that this is the one that actually sticks. I appreciate the fact that, it's a Montana company. It's a Montana family company that's doing that. It feels less extractive and more of a partnership. The fact that you maintain control of your businesses, you are vested in the community, and I appreciate that. I agree that we are in a position to advocate for those who are not at the table, and I think we've done a good job of that. I also want to also manage expectations, and I feel like this overall is a very good deal for Missoulians. And I think, you know, we've all highlighted the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, but I think not only is it exciting to be able to put that kind of amount of money into it, but it is so much more flexible than any other types of money we have access to at the city. We spend a lot of time beating up on MRA because they aren't doing what we want and building the types of, you know, housing, and they are so constricted on what they can and cannot do, whereas we have so much flexibility with the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So the fact that we are making a small investment in utilities and, you know, public good, and in exchange selling this piece of property that will put a significant amount of money into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, continue to bring more taxes in and spur economic growth in our community, I think is just cannot be understated. You know, in my other job, every year different states host a national conference, and they've come to me several times and been like, oh my gosh, we'd love to have Montana host the Committee on States conference. And I was like, we have no place big enough other than in Billings, and I'm not taking you all to Billings. So no offense, Billings. So someday I'll be able to say, yes, we can come and have that conference here in Missoula at this place that showcases the natural beauty of this amazing place that we call home. So I appreciate the conversation amongst council members, appreciate all the hard work that Ellen and the rest of the staff have done to get us to this point. And you better have Chris from the MRA at the ribbon cutting, because he's the one other person who has spent decades looking forward to this finally coming to fruition. And I feel good about this one sticking. So thanks, and I'm happy to be in support.
Indeed. Thank you, Councillor Anderson. And Councillor Becerra.
Thank you, Mayor. May I share my screen for my comments?
Yes, you may.
I'm hoping this works. Maybe not. Are you seeing this?
It looks like it's going up. It looks like it's loading now.
Okay. So I'm just trying to show off because I learned how to use this tool on Google Earth, but I'm a visual person and I think this captures my enthusiasm for this project. This is 1995. And as, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but here's the property. Let's just jump to 2005. 2006, I think it's when the parking lot was paved. 2009, 2014. Look, I'm running out of space here for 2021. And I think this is the latest. So I'm showing this because I would like for the next set of pictures and this historical imagery to show actual construction. And it's been way too long, and I am so excited for this. I think this could be a really good catalyst for a lot of investment in this area, and grateful for all the work that our staff has put into this, and to the developers for partnering with us on this, and I'm in full support of it. Thanks.
Thank you for walking us through that historical pictograph. That was so interesting and well
I'm just
done.
showing off to my husband, who thinks I don't know how to do this, but
We are your witnesses that you have that skill. All right. Well, we have wrapped up our council comments, which means that we can take a vote on 3 motions. We'll take those motions separately. The first motion does require a supermajority of city council because it is the sale of city land. So, Ms. Trimble, when you are ready, we'll go ahead and take a roll call vote on each of the motions separately.
All right, let's begin with approving the agreement for the purchase and sale of real property between the City of Missoula and Averill Hospitality LLC, and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement. Beginning with Jones.
yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Vasika,
Yeah.
Anderson,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Carlino,
Yes.
and Farmer.
Yes.
And with 11 in favor and none opposed, that passes unanimously.
Excellent, thank you. On to the next motion.
Our next motion is a motion to approve the development agreement between the City of Missoula and the Missoula Redevelopment Agency and Averill Hospitality LLC and authorize the mayor to sign the same. Beginning with Jordan,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Vasika, Vasika,
One more
is that a
time.
yes?
I think it must be her microphone
Can
is,
you hear me now? Yeah?
yep, we
Yes.
sure can.
Okay.
Anderson,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Carlino,
Yes.
Farmer,
Yes.
and Jones.
Yes.
That also passes unanimously. Our last motion of the evening is a motion to approve the Fox Triangle Land Use and Development Requirements Agreement between the City of Missoula and Averill Hospitality LLC and authorize the mayor to sign the same. Beginning with Nelson,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Vasika, I see that
Now,
you're
yeah?
unmuted.
I'll switch
Yes.
microphones.
Got it. Anderson,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Carlino,
Yes.
Farmer,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
and Jordan.
Yes.
And that's 11 in favor, none opposed. That also passes unanimously.
Okay, well, thank you all very much for a wonderful evening of dialogue and conversation. I am extraordinarily pleased to be here with you all in this moment. We're very much looking forward to the next steps. Averill Hospitality has continued to be good faith operators in how we are continuing to find a win-win project for the community of Missoula. We're looking forward to moving forward, and thank you all, council members, for your thorough questions and great dialogue, and also members of the public that are here this evening. So with that, that wraps up our item tonight. We're not quite done with our agenda, but almost. And so thank you so much, and congratulations, everybody. Well done. With that, we do have public comment on non-agenda items. If there's anybody here wishing to make public comment on non-agenda items, now is your time. I'm not seeing anybody in the room. Is there anybody online that wishes to make public comment on non-agenda items? And I'm not seeing anybody online wishing to make public comment on non-agenda items. So with that, communications from the mayor, and I am just going to say, I am elated to be at this point. Thanks, everybody. This is a great day for Missoula. And with that, that wraps up my comments. I'll go ahead and hand this over to city council members, and I'll start with folks here in the room and Councilor Melson.
I'll pass tonight, thanks.
All right, Councilor Cheryl.
I just want to echo what you said. I'm really excited. This is a big opportunity for our city, and I'm just very happy to, I'm actually really happy to be here this late tonight because I'm so happy with the outcome, so.
Thank you. Councilor Becerra.
I'll pass, thank you.
All right, you bet. And Anderson.
We ended earlier than I anticipated, so I'll pass. Y'all heard enough from me tonight.
I saw that bag of Jelly Bellies. You were ready. Yeah. Thank you, Councilor Savage.
I'll just be brief. You all may have talked about this last week, but we lost a great leader in Missoula. Bob Oakes passed away. Bob Oakes is known as King of the North Side. Had Bob not been a part of organizing on the North and the West Side for the last, I think, 30 to 40 years, so many pieces of infrastructure would not be there. I don't know that anyone else was bringing community land trusts into the conversation as early as Bob was, or advocating for pedestrian access across the railroad tracks after a grade level crossing was closed. I had the chance to go to a celebration of Bob's life on Friday night, and I got to tell you, it was the most beautiful Northside thing I've seen in a long time. Lots of people, lots of stories, good food, good people, shots of whiskey in the garage, if you so chose. I mean, it was a really, really beautiful event. And yeah, I just wanted to say that and honor Bob just briefly.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us in honor of Bob Oakes. Thank you, Councillor Savage and Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll pass tonight.
All right, and Councillor Carlino.
Pass.
All right, Councillor Jones? Okay, thank you very much. How about for council members online? I know you've been having a hard time hitting that microphone, but Councillor Vasika, any comments from you or Councillor Jordan?
Thank you, though.
Okay, you bet. Councillor Jordan?
As well, thanks.
Okay. All right, well, thank you all very much. So then with that, we will go ahead and adjourn our meeting at 9:31 p.m. Thanks, everybody.